do more for the people of Guyana is present, but their willingness, sir, is absent, is woefully absent. And you see it through the way they apportion and what they allocate to. Mr. Speaker, as a result of this, in the midst of plenty, there is poverty. 48% of Guyanese are living below the poverty line. And this is not the AP and UFC collation stats. These are the stats by the reputable organizations from which we get the statistics. 48%, Mr. Speaker, according to the World Bank. According to the World Bank, just in case I'm not clear, they said, sir, that 43% of the Guyanese are living under the poverty line. Mr. Speaker, they have said, Mr. Speaker, the FAO in 2023 said that 43% of Guyanese cannot afford a healthy diet and that 5% of Guyanese are malnourished. That is what the FAO report says, Mr. Speaker. So they can heckle all they want. They like to say the numbers do not lie. Well, the numbers are not lying now, Mr. Speaker. The numbers are not lying now. Mr. Speaker, I will quote from the World Economic Forum Global Risks Report. You all need to go pull it down and read it. The World Economic Forum report says, Mr. Speaker, that the cost of living crisis is the #1 risk the world will face in the short term over the next 2 years and in the long term for the next 10 years. That is what the World Economic Forum report says, Mr. Speaker. And yet, sir, with all of this empirical data that is showing that we are suffering, Mr. Speaker, this government, sir, allocated a measly 0.5% of this budget to address cost of living and the cost of living crisis, Mr. Speaker. 0.5%, not 1, 0.5, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and we have a head of this government that has the gall to say, oh, the people of Guyana are my friends and my family. Mr. Speaker, with friends and family like these, may God protect us from our enemies, Mr. Speaker. May God protect us from our enemies. Mr. Speaker, this is serious. Mr. Speaker, more can be done for the people of Guyana who are suffering. Mr. Speaker, that sweeper cleaner who earns $85,000 a month, Mr. Speaker, $50,000 on rent, another $15,000 on transport. She has to spend $10,000 a week to feed herself and her 2 children, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is the end of her salary. She still has not paid GWI. She still has not paid GPL. And the head of this state, Mr. Speaker, the head of state and his government have the temerity to put in the budget that they are studying cost of living measures. For the last 2 years, Mr. Speaker, they have been studying and consulting, and the people of Guyana are starving. And whilst the Rome is burning, Nero is fiddling his thumbs. Mr. Speaker, we will say, sir, that we are happy. We are happy that this grant, the Because We Care grant, sir, has been increased. That is a good thing. And we commend the government for that, Mr. Speaker. And we commend them also for continuing the feeding program that the coalition government started, because we appreciate, sir, the connection between nutrition and cognition, Mr. Speaker, and learning. And so, Mr. Speaker, this is good, but Mr. Speaker, more is possible. More is possible because we have more at our disposal, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for example, why can we not work together to devise a scheme to subsidize transportation for school children? Mr. Speaker, they've allowed the buses to rot. Mr. Speaker, why can we not? We have the funds, sir, and with 0.5% of this budget allocated, it will mean that parents will no longer have to carry the burden of paying for transportation, Mr. Speaker, freeing up money in their pockets and allowing them to have more disposable income. Mr. Speaker, My colleague, Ms. Flubes, earlier gave us the price of commodities, of basic food items in the shop. Mr. Speaker, why can we not, as this government that so cares about people, Mr. Speaker, why can we not have a program to subsidize the basic food items, Mr. Speaker? Egg, rice, sugar, milk, potatoes, Mr. Speaker, so that single parents, the most vulnerable amongst us, sir, can go to the store and be able to have, sir, these items that they depend upon for their survival. Mr. Speaker, it is possible for us to do with a mere 1.5% allocation from this budget, Mr. Speaker. The ability, sir, is present. The willingness, sir, is absent. And that is unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, look, we want to say that we are happy that programs such as WIN, Mr. Speaker, are continuing. We are happy about that, sir. Mr. Speaker, we agree that it is important for women to be able to participate meaningfully in our economy. Mr. Speaker, the most recently published labor force survey shows that the labor participation rate of women is 40% less than that of men. Despite less women participating in the market, Mr. Speaker. Yes, sir.
To us, right?
I'll be happy to do that, sir. Mr. Speaker, the labor force survey, our last labor force survey, Mr. Speaker, shows that despite less women participating in the labor market, the unemployment rate of women is 50% higher. Mr. Speaker, we cannot have inclusive growth if our women are not gainfully employed or able to meaningfully participate in this oil and gas economy. And Mr. Speaker, while we commend the WIN program, the statistics that I just cited suggest to us, Mr. Speaker, that these interventions are not enough. And so to this end, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage the government that empowering women economically is not just a moral imperative, but it is an economic strategy. It is smart. It is smart. It is the smart thing to do. Mr. Speaker, when our women thrive, so does the economy. And so I want to urge us, Mr. Speaker, to invest more in partnering with private sector women's organizations. There's the Women in Oil and Gas. There is the Women's Chamber of Commerce. There's the We Lead organizations. Those organizations, sir, that will be able to establish training programs and to train and mentor women in business and to set up business incubators for women. Mr. Speaker, the initiatives are present, but my point is, sir, that we need to do more because more is possible. Because for the first time in our post-colonial history, in our post-independence history, Mr. Speaker, we have the resources to do all of these things, sir. And we can do it today. Mr. Speaker, the time is now, sir, for bold and visionary investments in our human capital. Mr. Speaker, we must understand and we must know that our human capital is by far our most important asset, Mr. Speaker. It is the most important for our long-term economic development. Sir, look, let's look at the investment as it relates to capital projects. Mr. Speaker, since assuming office, this government has increased spending on roads and bridges and buildings by 600%. 600%. Mr. Speaker, and CapEx outstripped employment spending by 5%. Mr. Speaker, despite receiving about $335 billion from the Natural Resources Fund within the last 2 years, this government's been spending has produced a deficit of 12%. Mr. Speaker, this is alarming. Mr. Speaker, you know, we euphorically boast about being the fastest growing economy in this part or in the world, period. But Mr. Speaker, I will say to us that the cautionary tale of Ghana is there to tell us that unless we are prudent, sir, unless we are prudent, We could end up there, Mr. Speaker. As you know, Ghana was declared as having the fastest growing economy in the world in 2019. And today, sir, they're facing their worst debt crisis, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, the time is now more than ever for sober and temperate, sir, spending. Mr. Speaker, and let me make this clear, because the chief apologists on the other side like to say that we don't understand big picture and we don't support infrastructure. We're not against infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, and I wish to make that very, very clear. I wish to disabuse the minds of my colleagues on the other side that we are against infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, we understand on this side of the House that infrastructure is one of the subsets of the components that will drive our long-term economic growth, Mr. Speaker. But what we are against, Mr. Speaker, is the reckless spending. That is what we are against. What we are against, Mr. Speaker, is the recklessness with which this government is spending the people of Guyana's money, Mr. Speaker. Last year, this government allocated $218 billion, sir, to capital expenditure progress. We warned then that neither the government nor the private sector could, and even the two entities collectively did not have the capacity, sir, to execute that size of a project. We warned that our efficiency gap was so severe that about 41% of the allocated sum would be wasted, Mr. Speaker. And exactly what we have warned about has happened. You only have to look in the newspapers and on the Facebook to see these roads that they are building, Mr. Speaker, and are cutting ribbons for, Mr. Speaker. Nothing but glorified footpaths, Mr. Speaker. And when they are wider roads, Mr. Speaker, they're already sliding into the canals. Go to Burma, Mr. Speaker, and contractors are receiving, sir, millions, tens of millions to start work. And 6 months later, nothing. Mr. Speaker, this year CapEx stands at $388 billion. Of course, barring the supplementals that they will come for. And Mr. Speaker, you know what is the funniest? That's not the part that befuddles me in all of this, you know. What befuddles me is that we are investing hundreds of billions of our money, building all kinds of roads and bridges and all kinds of things, Mr. Speaker. And the most critical piece of infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, we are neglecting. Mr. Speaker, the sea walls, Mr. Speaker, our sea and river defense is the most critical infrastructure for a low-lying coastal state like Guyana, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, every country in the world is fortifying itself against rising sea levels, Mr. Speaker, against the effects of climate change. And guess what, sir? We're doing the opposite. In fact, Mr. Speaker, in this budget, we decreased our allocation to sea and river defenses. We allocated $5.5 billion last year, and this year we have allocated $4.9 billion. So, Mr. Speaker, this is the economic dynamism that we're talking about. Mr. Speaker, every country in the world is fortifying itself. Every country with the resources are doing the projects necessary to fortify themselves against climate change and rising sea levels. But we here in Guyana are doing the opposite. Mr. Speaker, the science is clear. Sea levels are rising, sir. And the science is telling us, sir, by 2030, Mr. Speaker, by 2030, it is entirely possible that Georgetown will be underwater. Mr. Speaker, the science is clear. It tells us that we are more prone now to tsunamis and tidal waves than we have ever been. And this government is running around this country, building roads, building bridges, building hotel rooms, building golf courses, building synthetic tracks, and failing to do the most important thing, Mr. Speaker, and that is to protect them from flooding and from the sea coming in on us, Mr. Speaker. It appears as though, sir, that if it is left up to this PVPC government, all of us are going to be washed away. Mr. Speaker, and to hear these good men and women on the other side pontificate, Mr. Speaker, and one piece of critical infrastructure they have neglected. Mr. Speaker, I want to turn to foreign affairs. I usually leave my good colleague on the other side for last. Mr. Speaker, I want to be clear at the outset, as we have said continuously. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of our territorial integrity and of our sovereignty, Mr. Speaker, we stand resolutely. We stand as resolutely, sir, as the Pakaraimas, and we are saying, sir, that we will support all of the endeavors of this government, Mr. Speaker, that is geared towards preserving, sir, our territorial integrity. Mr. Speaker, I want to put on record our gratitude to the bipartisan team who late last year, sir, made some excellent submissions to the ICJ, Mr. Speaker. Their submissions were, in my view, impenetrable. And so we look forward, sir, to a victory, not only for international law, but for the people of Guyana. Having said that, though, Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me, sir. It would be remiss of me, while we stand against those that would want to alter the shape of Guyana, it would be remiss of me, sir, not to draw our attention to a matter that threatens not to undermine us from without, but from within, sir. And that is the unchecked migration across our porous borders, particularly, sir, in the Essequibo and the establishment of settlements there. Mr. Speaker, this government appears either unable or unwilling to appreciate that this is an existential threat to us as Guyanese and to our sovereignty, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, they have this attitude of burying their heads in the sand. That, Mr. Speaker, and coupled with the politically expedient decision that they took to alter the requirements, to water down the requirements for the obtaining of a Guyanese birth certificate, places us in clear jeopardy, sir, of being undermined from within. And we must demand, sir, that this government pays attention to this matter, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the time is now for a clear and comprehensive immigration policy. Because, sir, we are not against immigration. We're not against immigration. For decades, Guyanese have migrated in search for a better life for themselves and families, Mr. Speaker. And so we're not against migration, but what we are asking for and what we are demanding is that this government expound, sir, a clear immigration policy so that we understand where we stand and we understand what the future course of actions will look like. This ad hoc transactional approach to our foreign relations has to stop, Mr. Speaker. You can't be going all the way to the Asiatic regions, Mr. Speaker, to talk about labor shortage when you have failed to look right in the Caribbean first, Mr. Speaker, for labor force. There's a level, sir, of inconsistency, sir, in this government's approach. Mr. Speaker, let us say that at the epicenter of our foreign policy lies, at the epicenter of our foreign affairs, rather, lies the issue of our foreign policy. Mr. Speaker, which entails the general objectives, sir, of our state and its interaction with foreign actors. Mr. Speaker, of course, it is formulated on the basis of our domestic policies and other international considerations. And Mr. Speaker, diplomacy is that vehicle through which our foreign policy is carried to its destination.
Honourable Member, and an extension is the vehicle. You'll need to conclude.
Comrade Speaker, I move that the Honourable Member be given 5 minutes to conclude her presentation.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chief Whip. Honourable Member, you may continue to conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, look, for decades, our foreign policy has been informed, sir, by clearly discernible principles. Clearly discernible principles. Friends of all, satellites of none. etc. Mr. Speaker, now we have no clue as to what we're doing. We have embarked upon this path of transactionalism, Mr. Speaker, that will redound to our detriment later on. Mr. Speaker, there is no clearly adumbrated foreign policy. Where's the Todd Doctrine? Where's the Jagdeo Doctrine? Nothing, Mr. Speaker. There is nothing because they have no vision for the foreign affairs sector. Mr. Speaker, we, sir, have been now victim of inconsistencies, a carnival of inconsistencies. One day Taiwan is opening an office, the next day it's closed. Mr. Speaker, what are we doing? Mr. Speaker, we have departed, sir, from long-standing, Mr. Speaker, positions. We have de-recognized the SADR, Mr. Speaker, and it seems as though we are blown with every wind of doctrine. But Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you what the trouble is. Mr. Speaker, the trouble is that this government is unable to discern between its private interests and the interests of the state. And so the state's interests are subjected to their private interests and their deals and their kickbacks, Mr. Speaker. That is what the problem is. Mr. Speaker, we are now viewed as day traders, and so nobody takes us seriously anymore. Mr. Speaker, professional diplomats, sir, professional diplomats were the hallmark of our diplomacy. We were able to punch above our weight in the diplomatic arena. Now we are saddled with the likes of Charan Das Prasad. Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, the rule is you can't raise someone's name who can't defend themselves in here.
I'm guided, sir. I'm guided, sir. Mr. Speaker, the High Commissioner, the former High Commissioner of Guyana to India, Mr. Speaker, who was seen on videotape, you know, in the vilest manner, abusing, Mr. Speaker, of Indian national, Mr. Speaker. And then you know what, Mr. Speaker? Again, this propensity, sir, to mislead the people of Guyana. We had the head of state on TV saying that Charan Das Prasad will be recalled. That is a matter of public record. Mr. Speaker, I wrote in this house asking the Honorable Minister, when is it that Mr. Charan Das Prasad was recalled as Foreign Affairs Minister? And you know what he told us? November, let me quote him correctly, November 10, 2022, Mr. Speaker, when the head of state appeared on television in this country and said to the people of Guyana in October that Mr. Charan Das Prasad is returning home. Mr. Speaker, that is the difficulty I have, the ease with which this government would mislead the people of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, look, years on, we are still yet to appoint ambassadors to Venezuela and to Brazil, Mr. Speaker, two of our most consequential interactions. Mr. Speaker, it appears that this government is only able or concerned to put people in positions who they consider as loyalists, Mr. Speaker, and so they would prefer to go for years without appointing an ambassador, Mr. Speaker, rather than give it, sir, to a discerning professional diplomat, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have to conclude. Mr. Speaker, and I will conclude by saying there's so much to say, Mr. Speaker, but so little time. So little time. Mr. Speaker, in concluding, I want to say to us all that the oil production offers this country a glorious opportunity to boost inclusive growth and to diversify the economy by addressing our human capital and our infrastructure gaps. Mr. Speaker, it is clear to me that the PPPC cannot get out of its own way to govern this country in a fair and equitable and inclusive manner. Mr. Speaker, even the projects that are intended to be transformative are either geographically misplaced or woefully underfunded. The logic, sir, behind putting a tourism and hospitality industry in Port Morant, in the agricultural belt of this country, when the hotels are 90% of them located in the capital city, is beyond me, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the failure to put a robust sea defense program, sir, into effect is tantamount to us, sir, abandoning our coast to the sea. Mr. Speaker, this budget is high on dollars, but wanting, seriously wanting in common sense. Big on concrete, but short on care and compassion. Mr. Speaker, once again, we are faced with a budget that does nothing for the poor and working class in comparison to what is being done for big business, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, while I thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and of Finance rather, and their hard-working staff for putting together this budget, I am afraid that in its current iteration, I cannot support it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Now for the Honorable Minister Kwame McCoy.
Mr. Speaker, colleagues on the government side, you know, the last two presentations, or in fact the two presentations by the opposition so far in this debate is basically about theatrics and drama. You know, the thing is, I know one of your MP, the one that started off the debate, was looking for artificial tears last night in 3 drugstores on the East Bank. And thankfully, well, perhaps it would have been more helpful to make sure that she had access to that tube of artificial tears. It is not about how much you can dramatize. It's not about how much theatrics you hold or possess that would make a difference in terms of the debate. It is about people being able to understand the reality of any given situation that you wish to present to them. And a lot of what have been said here today is really far away from the reality, far-fetched, so much so. One of your MPs said, sugar, MP Nima flew best. Sugar now is how much? A pound of sugar is how much now? $400. I sent in Maka a 5-pound pack of sugar from Maka just a short while ago. 5-pound sugar is $800. She said 1 pound was $400. A pound of sugar, $160. Coming out of Maka, I thought it would be best to buy it from Maka because she lives there. This is what? Straight out of Maka. The oil that she said is $800, $400. $400. If we could go with issues like these with an intention of misleading people, ordinary people.
Honorable Minister, you have to use a better word than misleading, right? Than misleading. It's imputing.
I apologize, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Minister, I'll give you back your time. Let me apologize to the Honorable Acting Prime Minister, Anil Nandalal, for not recognizing him this morning.
We cannot come here and tell stories that don't represent the reality. And we can't come here and pretend that something is what it is not. And this is how you have succeeded and survived for many years. Thankfully, these days are much more enlightened days. Much more enlightened. And we're being watched all across the world on social media and other platforms. And if you, anyone, sitting here not knowing what happens here in Guyana, would go away with the impression that the cost of living issue is so damning and the most horrible situations exist in Guyana, and only Guyana. This is a worldwide phenomenon. We as a government has owned this issue. We've been speaking about it. We have addressed these issues. That's why you've seen us all over this country over and over. You think it's just for the purpose of cameras? This is because we want to be in touch with people. We want to feel what people are feeling. We want to know what they're feeling. And it's by those many engagements, hundreds upon hundreds by now, each minister in this room by now have been on more than 200 outreaches, each minister across this country. Each minister. And that is because we are available to the people, to work with the people, to find solutions to the people, whether it be cost of living, climate change, whether it be any issue that affects any part of our society or our country. We move around. That's how we know who owns courts on that side. We move around. That's why we know who beat up the husband on that side. We move around. That's why we are familiar with the issues. Because people meet us and they tell us and they keep us informed, up to date, and engaged on all of these issues. Why should we come here? And you know, it is, more of it is coming. More of the theatrics. You got the Catty-Hughes and all the others who will come with a fancy sounding language. Oh my God. Wow. And you will tend to believe a nice British halfway Guyanese accent. But they're coming here to cacophile you with a lot of, that's who they are. That is what makes them who they are. And they survived with that type of language for many, many years. Many, many years. But we know where the GT&T money went, whose bank account. We're going to tell you more. There's not so much in the budget. This is crucial issues, yes, a lot more. These are crucial issues. Julius is right here. He is here. Julius is here. And now, you and Nigel is the same thing anyway, but the IDB never ruled that the Amila Falls was not feasible. I don't recall that, and I don't know that to be any true.
They voted against the Amila.
They voted against the Amila Falls project. And then they also had an extortion scheme with Fit Motilal. You remember who was Fit Motilal? Person doing the PR? Those people over there. The woman with an English accent. Yes. You know, where are the animals that were killed in Makkah? I would like to see them. Let's go there and exhume them now. This is how these people, I saw this thing on Facebook one Saturday, and I became concerned that this might actually be happening. And I inquired, and we proceeded to the point of finding out that none of it existed. None of it was true. Why are you doing this? To be in opposition don't mean you have to distort the facts. Don't mean you have to misrepresent people. You don't have to spread misinformation. You must come here on the basis of facts. And I can tell you, some people come here and they pretend that they have all the love for certain people. And when they had the opportunity, they never demonstrated that love. Never did. Never did. Never did for one moment. Because if you love the people of Makkah, you wouldn't run them around with cutlass when they're not in favor with you. If you love for the people that you claim you love, you would have given them house lots how many years ago? You had 5 years. Imagine, the government is trying to add value to lives, and an opposition is telling the people, don't move, don't move, don't move. You can't go to the bank with 2 pigs and 2 black fowl and get a mortgage. You can't go there. 2 pig and 2 black fowl. You got 2 houses in Makkah.
Honorable Minister, you should speak to the speaker.
So they are coming here to dramatize and to get this impression that, it is only us who care about the people. Oh, everything is so bad, and things are bad, and this is bad, and that is bad. This must stop now. It must stop now. We are busy building a country for every Guyanese. We are busy building a country in which all its people would benefit. All the people. I will grab you and jump with you. We'll have a swim together. This is all a country in which you have had, this country, let us be fair, we have never had in this country a more responsive government than the People's Progressive Party civic government. We have never had in this country a government that has been moving things for people like the People's Progressive Party civic government. What you had in 5 years was a group of people. And if you take that 8 persons that they granted lands to in that 5 years, 8 people that got lands 3 or 4 times the size of Barbados. 8 persons. And the ordinary man had no house lot. And they had nothing. And they were always about wanting to develop people. And we love people. And we love black people. And we love everyone. And even among yourselves, you never collectively demonstrated true love for Guyanese people. Monies that was supposed to go to poor people under the SLED program was misplaced. Up to now, you can't see this barber shop. I waited for cut me hair. Up to now, I can't get a chance to. I want to go into this fancy barber shop. 960 million allocated to youth. And it just shows how you have no clue of how a budget program operates. A line item that identifies a sum of money for youth development is not the end of it all. It is part of what goes in as the investment to young people across the country. Part, and a small part. When you take into consideration development of grounds and other facilities, scholarships, and so many other initiatives under the government, education, etc., it outweighs by far any 960 million. So my friend Amanza came here, the honorable member. You need to speak for yourself. She may not be your friend. The thing is, come here and give the impression as though it was the sum total all, you know, of the investment in youth. We are investing way beyond 960 million in our young people. And yes, the one thing you can rest assured with a People's Progressive Party civic government is what we say we will do, we will do. You don't have to second guess. You don't have to second guess us. Because guess what? Free university education will be a reality in this country before our 5 years is up. It will be.
They increased it. They increased it.
You increase the tuition when you are in government. So I don't understand what you're talking about. We put the tuition, all right, fair enough. We put it there, right? All right, good. Let's take your argument. You love the UG students. Why did you remove it? Why did you remove it? On top, you went to add on by 35%. What is the rationale behind your criticism of this? That, oh, you put it. You love UG students, don't you? You love them, right? No. The honorable member said the ability is present, but the willingness is absent. Now, the ability is indeed present. There is no absence of willingness on this part of side of the house in getting anything that will make Guyanese lives better. No unwillingness. No unwillingness. But I can tell you, we may be unwilling to go into any direction that will take our country downward, and we will make the best choices and the best decisions in keeping with the reality. Now, if I give all of you the oil money now over there, you're going to help, you're going to pay off courts, you're going to buy a wig, this one going to buy some car, and that's how it will go on. You're going to spend it on the fanciful things and not the things that matter to people. Because that's how you operate all the time. You can't manage. You can't manage for people.
And again, Minister, remember you're speaking to the Speaker, so you imputed a lot.
I'm sorry. You can't manage. You're incapable of managing for people. And it's not about how much money that we have, and the bulk of the money hasn't even started to come. But even with the money that we have, you think we are irresponsible, that irresponsible, to just be spending like white all over the place, helter-skelter. We have to do this, and I'm warning you, it is not about just having money and spending it. We have got to be prudent in our management, and this is what you can get and expect from this side of the house. This side of the house. Now, the subsidy for transportation, as she said, the Honorable Member Amanza, already, because I get impression that you guys were so much distant from each other when in government that you didn't offer this suggestion to the Granger administration in terms of transportation subsidy. But you had a 5B program that really touched just about 4,000 children across this country. And I'm being very generous by saying 4,000. Boots, bicycle, breakfast, whatever it is, all the bees, bangles and bracelets, perhaps, bed sheet. That was your philosophy in terms of a transportation subsidy. How could that, Brown Rum, how could that be anything superior to a Because We Care cash grant where every single child across this country get the opportunity for a grant? How could that? So when we talk, we mustn't only come here and try to sound nice and try to use our accent and all of the different things to fool people, cuffle, you know, the British accent and so forth. You know what I mean? And so we may be the fastest growing economy, but we have to manage not only for today, Mr. Speaker. We have to manage for today and the future of this country. We're not doing this for today only, because you would imagine that we got probably another 55 years here. We can't just manage anyhow. And I'm not saying this to say that a 55 years more in the PP civic government is because of some magic that will happen. We are working hard for 55 more years.
That's correct.
We are working more hard for 55 more years. Because it's going to be a 5, another 5, a 5, and it will go on. We are, Mr. Speaker, the government that will be there for all Guyanese at all times, and we make sure that our people all progress together. And so if we talk about reckless spending, I don't know the monies allocated to pensions increase is reckless. The money allocated to school grant program is reckless. So education and health are reckless spending. Monies allocated to road and bridges are reckless. The gas to shore, gas to power project, the harbor bridge, how could these be truthfully be described as reckless spending? And so it really bothers me when I hear the members on the other side speak these things and expect that all of Guyana will accept all of the nonsensical arguments and reasonings. Really? And I just want you to know that our people are becoming more and more educated. More and more educated. More and more educated. And that is why you will not be able to succeed with this type of utterances. Mr. Speaker, you know, listening to the the budget presentation, at least we had hoped, Mr. Speaker, that the marathon Shakespearean eloquence and oratory genius of the Honorable Dr. Ashni Singh, Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, which was on glorious display here on the January 16, would have instantly permeated the vacuous minds of the street bullies on that side and stupefied their infantile return to the cliches and rabble-rousing jargons with which they are best familiar. But unsurprisingly, Mr. Speaker, in the very moment, Guyanese of every class, color, and creed began celebrating the rewards of yet another people-focused masterpiece of a budget. We heard the woeful cries of the pompous puff of the person we've come to know as the new opposition leader, whimpering cluelessly and hopelessly about friends, family, and favorites. Mr. Speaker, our proud, intelligent, and ambitious citizenry, who are fully in sync with our One Guyana program, who are excitedly engaged with the national transformation process, and who are already positioning and empowering themselves for a most rewarding future. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, all they'll be hearing over the next few days from the opposition benches are the unintelligible utterances like growth doesn't reflect development, they're not sharing all the oil money, like we want them to, of course. And so we can get the treasurer to sign blank checks for our gold bangles and coat shopping. We will hear the infantile cliches about friends and families and the tired, out-of-touch race-baiting rants of people who have already fortified their legitimacy of meaningful representation in the National Assembly. In the just 2 short years of being here, that's all they bring to this august house over the next few days, Mr. Speaker. A cacophony of opaque and poisonous spews. But luckily, Mr. Speaker, conversely, Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, the governing People's Progressive Party civic government, Guyanese will definitely hear from us comprehensive analysis of the macroeconomic parameters of Budget 2023. They will hear pellucid explanations of the fiscal programs and measures of the budget, those that have been intelligently choreographed to construct and fortify a multidimensional economy that is deliberately and intentionally designed to leverage the economic growth spurred from the oil and gas sector to catalyze the traditional sectors and forge emergence of new frontier sectors, all of which will coalesce to create and undergird a sustainable development paradigm for 2030 and beyond. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, Guyanese will hear from this side of the House layman reasoning, simple breakdowns of the nitty-gritty of what every little allocation of resources mean for our country and its citizens. In other words, we will tell them what's in it for them and what's in it for the country as a whole. Mr. Speaker, over the next few days, we will explain to our citizens how consecutive double-digit annual growth in our economy translates into real-term development, how it allowed us to abolish more than 200 new taxes by the APNU AFC government that were placed like an albatross around the people's neck, how it allowed us to reintroduce and rapidly increase the school children's cash grant, which the wicked APNU AFC government took away from our children, how it allowed us to reemploy hundreds of sugar workers who the APNU AFC government unceremoniously sent packing into a wilderness of sure poverty. We will explain how after 5 years of only a few dozen house lots and contracts only for the husband of the APNU AFC minister, we are able to issue hundreds, thousands rather, of lots in every region of this country, build thousands of low-income and young professional homes all across Guyana, remove VAT on building materials, reduce mortgage interest rates, increase the low-interest mortgage ceiling, provide stone, cement, and steel, and assist with construction management for qualified home builders. Mr. Speaker, we will demonstrate to Guyanese how economic growth is allowing us to create brand new 4-lane highways from Mandela Avenue to Diamond, from Ogle to Eccles, and on to Suzdike to Mary. A 4-lane highway from Schoonard to Crane, and a new road linkage from Parika to Goshen. Mr. Speaker, because the opposition leader is incapable of explaining how growth is development, and it's not hard to imagine, we will tell the people how growth is allowing us to fully rehabilitate the entire Linden-Suzdike Highway, commence the first leg of the Pan-American Highway from Linden to Maburo Hill, then all the way to Lethem, how we are able to open up a 4-lane passage across the city from Conversation Tree, complete and extend.
Honorable Minister, you'll need an extension to extend this presentation.
Mr. Speaker, I'm really tempted to ask for 15 minutes, but I will ask for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister McCoy, you may continue to conclude.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we will explain to all the people of this country, since the opposition is incapable of doing that, we will tell them how economic growth is allowing us to build a 4-lane bridge across the Demerara River and the east to west bank and new bridges from Mackenzie to Wismar and from Guyana to Suriname. We will articulate how growth is allowing us to transform the energy sector of our country with unprecedented investment in gas-to-energy plant, large-scale solar and wind farms, and hydroelectric power. We will explain to the opposition and the people of this country all the measures in the budget that are geared towards advancing and improving the lives of our Guyanese brothers and sisters. Mr. Speaker, these and many other measures are real development, felt directly in the pockets of people, as well as the transformative types of development impacting the macroeconomic outlook of our country. Mr. Speaker, the opposition leader is incapable of comprehending how growth translates into development. We will enlighten him of the catalytic impact of the brackish water shrimp farms developed in Berbice, the mega soya beans plantation at Takama, the rice plantation expansion in the Rupununi, the coconut and livestock improvement programs, and the hemp and millet plantations in the pipeline. Our budget, the people's budget, is about agriculture, agro-processing, manufacturing, commerce, tourism, infrastructure development in Essequibo, Demerara, Berbice, right across our country, putting monies into the pockets of people, making sure that all across our country, our people can get by and get by steadily. It cannot be a program that addresses everything all at once. It is not a one-shot program. It is a continuous program since coming into government in August of 2020. We have been building on all of the initiatives. We have been fulfilling our manifesto promises. We have been increasing the stock of our public infrastructure. We have been improving the assets of people every single year right across this country. Those who didn't have now have. Those who don't have all that they want will have it at some time in the future, because our country and our economy is working for all the people and will be a steady movement towards the improvement of people's life. For those race-baiting naysayers on the opposition benches, it will be difficult for you to cloud the reality that thousands of Guyanese are able to educate themselves through thousands of academic scholarships from the Guyana Online Academy of Learning. How thousands of young men and women from Sophia, West Ramville, Linden, and every other part of our country are benefiting from technical vocational skills training program. Mr. Speaker, APNU AFC may not have heard and may not have been able to make the connection between growth and development that has allowed Guyana to once again create history in the global climate change arena by becoming the first country to gain the status of certified carbon credit trader and earn millions of US dollars from the first sale that will directly benefit the development of Amerindian villages and other parts of our country. They may have missed this development, but their apathetic belligerence does not change these facts. They may have also missed the transformative educational reform agenda currently underway, or the world-class health sector that is emerging, and of course, they miss the unprecedented nationwide investment in our sporting and recreational facilities, our cultural heritage, and our young people altogether. Speaking of young people, Mr. Speaker, last year, the President established the National Youth Advisory Council. He also brought our men folk together to champion and aid grassroots development, support youth and community development, and support restorative justice across this country. But while these initiatives may be part of the qualitative growth paradigm of the country, they are partly not development at all if you are to take the opposition serious. Mr. Speaker, who in their right mind would argue that the commencement of the preparatory works for a new high-ground, smart, and carbon-neutral city for Guyana is not growth and development? On the new bridges in Buxton and Sophia, part of the development of those communities, how about the concrete footpaths all over Berbice and in the Victory Valley in Linden, the family recreational promenades, and real green parks, without any green paint, of course, being constructed all across this country?
You will need to wrap up now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can go on and on about the development, so numerous, but time would not permit, of course. We have had, no, I think I've used my time well, very, very well, very well. And I wish I can have some more to use it even more, much better, to do a much better job, of course. I didn't sing here today. But Mr. Speaker, the department in which I have responsibility, the Department of Public Affairs, have focused on expansive training opportunities for our young journalists and our young people in general in the media and communication spheres. I will close, Mr. Speaker, because of time constraint. I know you would love me to go from here. I could only imagine how stinging my presentation was, but I will be back at some time soon in the future. We will be back in other speakers. Look at all the giants here, yet to come.
Minister, you need to look at me because you're really testing patience now.
They're getting me so excited. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank you very much, Guyana, for the attention and understanding our reasoning and arguments around Budget 2023. Thank you, and you can look forward to a budget that will bring betterment to your lives. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And thank you, Honorable Minister McCoy. Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Mr. McCoy. Honorable members, let me welcome the next speaker, the Honorable Member, Mr. Cox, and while he takes the podium, join me in recognizing the presence of Regional Chairman for Region 4, Mr. Siram. Thank you, RC. Okay, please. And before you start, the Regional Chairman for Region 7, thanks for joining us. Honorable Member, remember it's 15 and you can get a 5 minutes extension. And you're starting at 2:36.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I rise to make my contribution on the debates for Budget 2023, permit me first of all to express best wishes to the Guyanese people for the year 2023, to express birthday greetings to those celebrating their birthdays, and anyone who may be celebrating an event or, in the case, lost a loved one. I express my sincere condolences to such person. Mr. Speaker, I just have 2 comments on my previous speaker contribution. As a matter of fact, it's a question, and this is from the Guyanese point of view. It would be useful to find out from the Honorable Kwame McCoy where exactly he got such a cheap oil from. Secondly, forgive me if I did not hear the Honorable Member correctly, but did he just confirm that to the people of Guyana that all the ministers of the government are a bunch of tourists? Mr. Speaker, an active outreach calendar by this government with a slush fund of $5 billion has not enhanced the relevance of local authorities. Mr. Speaker, I also want to say thanks to the staff of the Ministry of Finance for their continuous work in preparation for Budget 2023. I also want to thank the Honorable Minister of Finance for standing for more than 5 hours to read Budget 2023. However, I wish to remind the Honorable Minister of Finance that the people of Guyana is not impressed and would not judge Budget 2023 by how long he can stand and read. Rather, they will judge the budget by how appreciable and preeminent the measures included will be. I'm also reminded by a statement made by the Minister of Finance while on a program with the newsroom. So a large portion or a large part of the budget will be about addressing main irritants, the things that affect people in their day-to-day lives. Mr. Speaker, it begs the question, does the minister really understand what the day-to-day lives of the ordinary Guyanese is like? Mr. Speaker, if nothing else, the people of Guyana eagerly were looking forward to Budget 2023 since it included a substantial amount of the oil revenues for the first time. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, this budget is more than 40%, an increase from the previous budget. And so the people were eagerly looking forward to this budget with patience, with much enthusiasm. Sad to say, their enthusiasm has died suddenly. Mr. Speaker, I wish to turn to the issue of agriculture. The Finance Minister, the Honorable Member, said agriculture, forestry, and fishing sector is estimated to have expanded by 11.9% in 2022. I question the performance of this sector specific to the Borima-Waini region. I'm not doubting the performance of these sectors. What I'm doubting is the performance within my region, which I have responsibility for. Expansion and good performance of a sector can't be done in a bubble. It has not been impacting the lives of all Guyanese. And the government must accept its areas of weaknesses. Any good government will highlight their areas of weaknesses and address them in front of the Guyanese people, and that is to say, here in the National Assembly. I wish to turn your attention, Mr. Speaker, to an article, an editorial on Budget 2023 in the Starbrook News dated Monday, January 23rd, 2023. And I quote, "The man and woman in the street continue to be at the mercy of the market prices or forces that have pumped up the cost of living, particularly since oil production began. Increased demand in the food sector associated with oil and gas industry has driven up prices for basic items, and nothing that the government has done since its terms began has had a lasting effect on easing this burden." It continues, "The impact of the rising cost of living on those who can least afford it must be evaluated, understood, and acted upon. It is intolerable that with $1 billion earned from oil in 2022, that there are deep pockets of poverty with some households struggling to afford basic food." End of quote. Mr. Speaker, we must not come to the National Assembly and boast about a performance for a few elites, while the largest mass of the Guyanese people continues to struggle. That is my question. That is the issue I have with a government that continues to boast of performances, and yet you still have persons struggling. Yet we still have persons in poverty, and this is extreme poverty. Mr. Speaker, the expectation that there would have been a light at the end of the tunnel was instead allow the Guyanese people to be thrust into further darkness and despair by a so-called caring government that seems to be on the offensive against the Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, I am moved out of necessity to ask, and in the interests of the Guyanese people, the following fundamental questions. Is this government serious about indigenous progress? Is this government serious about equitable development? but even more fundamental, Mr. Speaker, is this the one Guyana the government boasts about? Mr. Speaker, we on the opposition questions the government performance in hinterland communities. I wish to turn my attention to education. It must be recognized, Mr. Speaker, that quality education is not only about access, but it requires a reorientation of the entire system that provides skills training so that persons can respond to global needs and expectation. With that being said, Mr. Speaker, I question the policies of the present government with respect to several programs as it relates to hinterland and indigenous communities. And one of them is, Mr. Speaker, the Gold Scholarship. I have a few questions for the Honorable Minister. Is the Minister aware that teachers who have enrolled on the program, Mr. Speaker, is the Minister aware that persons who have enrolled on the Gold Scholarship program from the hinterland have dropped out because of a number of factors, inclusive of internet access or no internet access, that is? Is the Minister even aware that persons who have enrolled on the CPC training program since 2022 are yet to begin the first class? Is the government aware, Mr. Speaker, that teachers who have to travel large or far distances in the interior, their travel expense surpassed 5,000 Guyana dollars on a daily basis, and they were even refused assistance from the relevant regional authorities? Mr. Speaker, what I'm saying here is that government must ensure when they are on these touring trips that they engage with the ordinary people on the street rather than meeting the elite of the RDC. And the RDC, the regional chairman, and those in high offices, they tell you what you need to hear. We want you to meet the Guyanese people and allow the Guyanese people to tell you what you should be hearing. And that is our concern. As a matter of fact, ministers, whenever they visit Mabruma, they would have meetings with 20 persons, with 40 persons. Out of the 40 persons, Mr. Speaker, 35 of them are staff of the RDC, are drivers, are handymen, are temporary workers. Meet the ordinary Guyanese people. Listen to the people. Public Works, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, several months ago, the Honorable Minister of Public Works visited Mabruma and promised the people of Barbina that they will be having a new road. We do not doubt the minister, but has the work started? Then he went forward to Wongna and initiated, in their own words, an emergency contract for the Wongna road works. Besides slush mud being spread across this road, Mr. Speaker, it has become worse with no sign of major work in progress. An emergency work, that is. As a matter of fact, it's only after several posts on Facebook and being bombarded by the RDC, and I was told by a minister through a phone call, only then the contractor decided that he will start moving some of the equipment to this emergency location. Mr. Speaker, what I want to highlight here is this is the issue. One person is being awarded several contracts. As a matter of fact, 95% of the contracts in Region 1. And this person is the common law husband of the regional vice chairperson. Then you have a brother of the said contractor living in Mabruma who controls part of the contracts there. if that's not enough, Mr. Speaker, another brother, a third brother, is a staff with responsibility at the RDC for works. And if this is what His Excellency rebutted by saying, yes, we are working for friends, families, and cronies, then this must not be. This cannot be. So, Mr. Speaker, one person being awarded several contracts cannot implement the contracts on time, and so you have works being roll over. We're yet to see any major work being commenced in Mabruma since 2020. And you have, Mr. Speaker, from 2015 to 2018, while the coalition was in government, you could name roads that were done under the coalition. And if you come here to tell the Guyanese people that the coalition did nothing, then that is untruth. And I said earlier, you must come to the National Assembly to tell the people what the opposition while in government did and what you are doing better. But you will not do that because in some places across Guyana, like where I came from, it's not being done better. Mr. Speaker, I want to applaud the government for continuing one thing, and that is the coalition vision for better roads in hinterland communities. Communities in Mabruma witnessed for the first time after 1992, 28 years to Mr. Speaker, 20 odd years later, Mr. Speaker, better roads. And while they were in campaign mode, they were telling the people you cannot eat road. But yet now you come to tell the people that concrete road is the best thing in the hinterland communities. The very road that you go there and you walk, I could remember the Honorable Ben walking in Komako on slush mud when he was the Minister of Works. And I think he fell one time in the mud, the Honorable Minister then. Slush mud, Mr. Ben, you could go there now, you won't fall, thanks to the APNO government. Indigenous development, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is a known fact that Guyana is poised for economic takeoff. And that the extent to which we can do so is dependent on the choices we make and our ability to collectively harness the skills and talents of our people in a bid to achieve progress and development. The allocation for developments in the hinterland and indigenous communities seems to be a well-regurgitated script from previous budget. That's not an issue, Mr. Speaker. The issue is the policies of the programs largely benefited the people. Has it actually become a reality in many cases? We question the government to provide the answer. And I'm sure the Honorable Minister coming after me, the Honorable Sonia Parag, will try to bring some clarity or answers to some of the questions. The preeminent focus of the government on ICT, indigenous land titling, solar energy, sustainable land management are all very important, Mr. Speaker.
And very important for you to get an extension to conclude.
Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Speaker. I do ask that the Honourable Member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Honourable Member Mr. Jones. Honourable Member, you may continue to conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to turn my attention a little bit to the part-time job program through which we see the good in its conception. However, this project is, in some views of the Guyanese populace, counterproductive. It will be far more effective if those persons receive training to enhance their skills and employment prospects rather than simply being paid a bribe for votes as it may be described. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure the Honorable Member, Mr. Charlie, could help me to understand when his time comes to speak, Mr. Speaker. But I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, emphasis must be placed on training for these youths. It is too often that these youths are not aware of their mandate. They're not being trained, they're not being exposed. So I question, when this program comes to an end, what next? Or is it they'll be continuing to pay these persons as a bribe for their votes? Yes, Mr. Speaker, like every other Guyanese, I am entitled, I have applied, I have met the criteria, and I was awarded. But I want to say one thing. Unlike many of the other Guyanese indigenous people, they don't have the privilege like me to call the Honorable Minister on her phone to help facilitate a scholarship. So they will not be getting any if they can't do that. Is that what we have to get at? Is that what we have to get at? Because I could recall bringing this topic in the National Assembly, and then the following year, the Honorable Minister met me to say, I didn't know you were speaking about yourself, and I didn't know that it was you who applied. But now that I know, now you can get it. Oh, that's how things must go in this country. Those who are listening, and thank you, the Honorable Member, Mr. Damla, for raising the issue. Every Guyanese people, or every young person in Guyana, does not have that privilege. Mr. Speaker, the indigenous people proposes. I just want to touch a little bit on the carbon credits, Mr. Speaker, as I close. The indigenous people, Mr. Speaker, as it relates to the HES signing of carbon credits, as is largely related to the indigenous people of Guyana, we would like to see what we call a governing board established by the National Two-Shows Council, one with an oversight committee that will monitor the execution of this fund. It must not be directly managed by the minister or simply by central government. Mr. Speaker, again we propose, Mr. Speaker, that the shows of the various villages across Guyana must have a say. And so that is why we are including the National Two-Shows Council. Obviously they are, and they represent a large percent of the populace, which is 10% of all of Guyana, the indigenous populace. Mr. Speaker, as I close, the budget speech reported inflation at 7.2% for 2022. I want to quote Ram and Macrae in their analysis, which titled Focus on Guyana's National Budget 2023, and it states, quote, it is the highest rate of inflation in the past 20 years. Mr. Speaker, in a recent editorial as well, which shows significant higher prices of the actual expense that a Guyanese will pay when they visit the market. The question here, Mr. Speaker, is what exactly has the government done to alleviate the hardship of these Guyanese persons? Old age pension, Mr. Speaker, should have been increased to 40,000 Guyana dollars. Public assistance, Mr. Speaker, should have been increased to $25,000. Public servants, Mr. Speaker, should have received an increase ranging from 10 to 20% on an average annual income basis. Mr. Speaker, a budget for the people must be one which directly strengthens their efforts to combat poverty, being able to have reliable access to sufficient quantity of affordable, nutritious food while meeting their other daily needs. And if this budget is one that will allow that, then I commend it. However, Mr. Speaker, as all my colleagues have already said, the budget has some loopholes. And until those can be addressed, Mr. Speaker, we cannot support this budget 2023. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. And now for the contributions made by the Honorable Member and Minister of Public Service, Sonia Parag. Honorable Minister, you may commence your presentation.
Mr. Speaker, allow me on behalf of the government, MPs, to wish our Vice President a very happy birthday, as well as our sitting member of Parliament, Minister Ramson, that is being celebrated today. Mr. Speaker, allow me to genuinely and wholeheartedly thank the Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, Dr. Ashley Singh, and his dedicated team at the Ministry of Finance for presenting us with yet another excellent fiscal plan. Budget 2023, even before I want to start this, Mr. Speaker, I know that my friend, the Honorable Sherrod Duncan, has been out of the House for over a year, but if we can control the flatulence that keeps coming out his mouth, that would be very helpful. Budget 2023 is comprehensive, it's brilliant, and even though the private sector and many other sections, and I want the honorable member who spoke just before me to hear this, that the National Shows Council recognized as the authority, the legal authority to deal with the Amerindians and indigenous peoples of this country, commended this budget. Many other sections of society have lauded its contents. We know that the main opposition has nothing but criticisms to offer. It is what they do. Smear everything good because they are incapable of doing it themselves. Instead of attempting to make any meaningful contributions to national development, they have and will come to this House heavily armed with their untruths and misinformation to mislead the Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, the arguments that we will hear from the APNU AFC MPs throughout these debates will be nothing but laughable, mediocre, and very much predictable because, quite frankly, they keep clutching at the same exhausted straws. Mr. Speaker, I want to address the speaker just before me, and then I will address the other speakers who came for the day. The honorable member, Mr. Cox, said that he was told by me that I did not know that he was the one who applied for a scholarship. That is in fact so, because you know what, Mr. Speaker? In 2021, when the Ministry of Public Service selected those persons for the Gold Scholarship, every single person who applied from Region 1 was given a Gold Scholarship. So if he wasn't there, Mr. Speaker, I can't do anything about it. Secondly, my cell phone number is on my Facebook page, available to all Guyanese. So it's not just that Mr. Cox can call me and get through. Any Guyanese can call me and get through. And that is how our government has operated from August 2nd to now, and we will continue to do so. Mr. Speaker, what the honorable member may or may not know is that there is another honorable member sitting on the opposition side of this House who is also granted a Gold Scholarship, who I did not have contact with. That is how inclusive this government is. Whether they're entitled or not, you don't come here and use it as a weapon against the government.
What are you using it as? In fact, you have to mention somebody else in the house who got it. How about you use
Mr. Speaker, I will turn my attention. I will turn my attention to another issue raised about the budget being increased by 40%. Yes, the budget was increased by 40%. But you know what, Mr. Speaker, like every single year and the last 3 budgets that we have passed, they never looked at it, they never bothered to understand it, because the 2 major projects is what has caused the increase in the budget, and that is the Gas to Shore project and the Damarara Harbor Bridge. When those projects are off the ground and completed, the budget will reduce. But they don't understand that because they haven't taken the time to look at it properly. The largest allocations, Mr. Speaker, in this budget is given to the Ministry of Education that takes care of national training and development in this country for students, for people with going for tertiary education. That is our human capital. Oh yes, our most valued asset. The Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Housing, the Ministry of Public Works, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Human Services, those have the largest allocations and they're all people-centered. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? They know that. But because they cannot come back with anything better, they're going to come with discrimination, racism, lack of inclusion.
the government? Why is angry?
Passion. What you call passion.
There's a difference between passion and border market.
Passion.
Yes. But you see, you see, opposition leader, I like the fact that you're smiling so much, because I see you looking around at your own members and wondering if they're going to stab you in the back.
Got truth.
With a seriousness. Mr. Speaker. Oh, because let's get it out. Because the Honorable Amanda Desir Walton came and said, govern the country. We on this side of the house, we are good. We have our house in order. But you know what? You don't have your house in order. Because probably you were looked at suspiciously too by the leader of the opposition. Mr. Speaker, the first speaker for the opposition, the Honorable Nima Flubes, a resident of Mocha, and I am responsible on the government side for Mocha, and I visit Mocha every week. And I would like to say this publicly. Every single time that I have entered Mocha, I have had a very warm welcome from all of the residents of Mocha. They are beautiful people. And I do believe that the kind of welcome that His Excellency had on his outreach is causing so much ruckus in the opposition side of things that they have to run around erratic as ever. This morning, the honorable member said words like erratic and so on, but by the honorable member's conduct inside of Mocha and inside of this house is the very definition of erratic. Because you know what, Mr. Speaker? She said, who saw me with a cutlass? There is a video of the honorable member wielding a cutlass in there. What is more, Mr. Speaker? What is more, Mr. Speaker? The honorable member that went on social media and cried and put on tears and so on, just for political gimmicks. The honorable member on a post made on the 3rd of December 2022 to her Facebook post. Let me put on notice the dunce tug, TUG, crew that running around in Mocha Arcadia community, keeping meetings and sending out threats. No dunce will control our village. No needy people that can be bought for a few shillings, CHILLINGS, instead of SHILLINGS, will control our village. And every square inch of resources that belong to the community will be inherited by the people of Mocha Arcadia. Mr. Speaker, I was at a meeting there, but you know what? This wasn't referring to me. This was referring to residents of Mocha, and they reacted. So when the honorable member wants to come here and feign concern and compassion for people in Mocha, the very same member on one of my visits down at the squatting area with the Ministry of Housing staff to look at the squatting area and whether it could be regularized. This is different from KNView. The honorable member and the NDC chairman came running there. And you know what? They were trying to get those people who have been living there for years out of Mocha. Out of Mocha. So the feigned concern and compassion for people.
Honorable Minister, I trust that is dated too, so you could leave a copy of your display with us.
Mr. Speaker, the issue with the squatters at KNView was dealt with in depth by the Ministry of Housing. In depth by the Ministry of Housing. And, Mr. Speaker, all measures were taken. The majority of the persons were given a home, they were given compensation. The persons who refused to move were offered a home by the government. Mr. Speaker, this was an opportunity that the opposition decided that they could milk it for all they can get for political gimmicks. Because you know why, Mr. Speaker? They can't take the progress of this government. They can't take it. Mr. Speaker, this is an area that is government reserve. So it's an illegal area. It's an area that you're squatting on, you don't own it. Now, the offer was made by the Ministry of Housing, and that is a fact, to have legal ownership of a home. Of a home. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? I have no doubt. I have no doubt that there were elements in this room on the other side that told people they shouldn't take it because this is ancestral lands. Mr. Speaker, I do my homework too when I have to work in a community. I do my homework as well. And it's not for politics, it is to ensure that there is development in that community as we intend it from this government.
First time you went in government, you never know what Mocha before. First time you went in government. That's just government.
As a matter of fact, no. As a lawyer, I entered Mocha several times. And I had clients in Mocha. But you wouldn't know about that. Now, they were talking about, Mr. Speaker, the first speaker was talking about on feeling and on a part. You love my name, don't you? You like my name clearly. Keep calling my name, it's okay. You unfeelingly and a part. Mr. Speaker, they talk about a love for public servants. The love for public servants. But they unfeelingly and unapologetically removed the tax-free bonus from the discipline services. Removed it. Removed it. Call it a bribe. Removed the Because We Care cash grant. And then the honorable member stands there and says, well, you know, I commend the Because We Care cash grant moving to $40,000, but we need to do more. Mr. Speaker, they took it away altogether. How can you believe people who discredit themselves by standing there in their own words discrediting them? How can you believe that? As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, as a matter of fact, this document here that we have, the APNU AFC 2015 manifesto, from beginning to end of their vision, from beginning to end, discredits them completely because nothing was done. No promise was honored in this manifesto. Just like you talked about, just like you talked about your competency as a shadow minister of foreign affairs, and they couldn't even use you when they went overseas. Oh my. Just as well, Honorable Member Desir, when you stand there and you talk about discrimination for 25 minutes and lack of inclusion and racism, but you want to purportedly, you want to and allegedly, you practice domestic violence. Mr. Speaker, the government, since assuming office on August 2nd, 2020, have all, and as a matter of fact, even before, we have had a track record of caring for all Guyanese well-being. The public servants inclusive. Because you know what? Every year, an increase of salary was given, no matter the state of finances. And we didn't always have oil money, Mr. Speaker, but an increase was always given. In 2020, a one-off bonus was given, a one-off cash grant was given of $25,000 to each public servant. In 2021, a salary increase of 7% was given. If you don't like it, give it up. In 2022, an 8% increase was given to public servants. But, Mr. Speaker, what the opposition does not understand, and I think they will never understand it because they don't know how to manage economically the purse of the country, is that when you are giving a salary increase for thousands of persons, you're talking over 60,000 people in the public sector, you have to talk about sustainability. So it will gradually increase. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? They may have given increases, and yes, public servants are entitled to that because they work. But what else have they done in terms of putting money in the pockets of public servants? They removed the cash grant. Every public servant who has a child benefited from that Because We Care cash grant. That's money going directly into their pockets. Every public servant benefited from the COVID cash, the COVID per household cash grant. Every public servant benefited from the programs. Housing, public servants benefited from. I know personally 3 disciplinary services persons who called to thank me because they applied since between 2015 and 2020 and was never given a house lot, but given by the Ministry of Housing in 2022. They cried because basic home ownership is necessary. Or is it like the Livan that had the flash drive during the rigging of the elections? That the elements over there might have orchestrated? Some who wanted to put their names on the declaration as well? Mr. Speaker, you know, the Vice President gave a live, and clearly the Honorable Member gave a live. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member, Ms. Desir, clearly listened to the live because she came here and said the Vice President wanted to work a reverse psychology on her, and I guess it worked. But you know what? Her brain is so wired to talk racism and discrimination. But I'll talk about PSM right now. Mr. Speaker, I believe the issue of racism and discrimination should be dealt with, as we have always done, transparently. and it should be dealt with publicly. The total number of gold scholarships awarded in 2021 was 6,000. The total number of gold scholarships awarded to Afro-Guyanese, 2,558, 42%, 42.6%. The total number of gold scholarships awarded in 2022, 7,410. Total number of gold scholarships awarded to Afro-Guyanese, 3,430, 46.3%. The Ministry of Public Service, percentage of Afro-Guyanese working there, 69.5%, and this is replicated across the entire public service, Mr. Speaker. All the programs and policies of this government will reflect, and if not even better percentages, that to show our inclusiveness of all Guyanese. All Guyanese. And you know, the honorable member as well, Mr. Cox, said that if he didn't call me, he doesn't know how other persons in the region will get to me. Do you know, Mr. Speaker, when I was able to speak with Mr. Cox, it was on an outreach at Region 1, when ordinary Guyanese from Region 1 were at that outreach, and he was one of them sitting there, and I spoke with him as well. And that is public. The Department of Public Information was there. They would have covered that. As expected, Mr. Speaker, they will come to this House professing their deep concern and profound love and care for the public servants. They will criticize the government for not giving public servants 50 to 100% salary increases if they could. Mr. Speaker, believe it or not, these are the same people who blatantly disregarded their promises to public servants, giving themselves first after entering office, 50% increase in their salary, and then they turn to the Guyanese people. That is the love that they had for public servants. That is the love that they had for public servants. Mr. Speaker, we are not a government that comes to the people with false promises and froth in our mouth. So for now, in addition to the gradual salary increases year after year, we will also support other means. We will also support other means of giving disposable income. As you know, Mr. Speaker, there was a promise made, and there was a commitment made, rather, by the Minister of Finance in the 2022 budget to look at the disparities in salaries in certain categories of workers in the public service. That commenced at the end of 2022, Mr. Speaker, with the disciplinary services and the healthcare workers. And His Excellency would have made an announcement, and the percentages were given. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is being looked at right now, and it will go across the public sector gradually as we go along, Mr. Speaker. That was a vision never had by the people who said that they care so much about public servants. Mr. Speaker, an additional $2.1 billion to fund the National School Feeding Program is given. That is the children with warm meals. We have also invested billions in an attempt to cushion the rising cost of living, which is not unique to Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I want to address this matter of cost of living. This is an imported cost of living. The rest of the world is facing this. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? In 2015, it was a deliberate act of inflation when they put on the backs of all ordinary Guyanese more than 200 taxes. More than 200 taxes. They deliberately did that. While this is imported and not out of our control, they deliberately did that. And they profess their love for all Guyanese.
Inflation was 0.9.
Mr. Speaker, when we commit to developing the lives of our people, we don't mean that this will be done in a vacuum and in a manner that is singular and short-sighted. I believe it is as early as primary school that we were taught not to put all of our eggs in one basket. This is why when this government speaks of the development of public servants and the advancement of all Guyanese, we do not do that in a myopic and visionless way. While we continue to raise salaries incrementally, we are also focusing on making the lives easier for all Guyanese across every sector, be it providing improved access to housing and water or delivering increased opportunities for academic and skills development. When we act in a manner that will comprehensively and holistically improve the lives of every man, woman, and child across every region and within every community. Despite all the national accomplishments, our beloved APNU AFC members will still come to this house and shamelessly try to criticize us for anything and everything, including the disparity in public servant salaries and the waiting time for new public servants to receive their salaries. As has become predictable, the APNU AFC MPs will come to this house and complain about everything, offering no sensible solution to any problem that Guyanese will face. Mr. Speaker, my realization that the main opposition is truly barefaced and conscienceless came after they started hurling criticisms at our scholarship policies, including gold, which continues to see thousands of Guyanese. And, Mr. Speaker, with the $1.8 billion allocated in this year's budget, we will surpass the target of 20,000 scholarships in 2023, 2 years early. So, Mr. Speaker, by 2025, we would have substantially increased the number from 20,000 to another. Promise delivered. Mr. Speaker, PSM scholarship, the largest scholarship grant is given to the University of Guyana. The largest scholarship grant is given to the University of Guyana. So it is boggling to me that somebody would come here and say, oh, you come to say that you promised to give UG free and you don't do it yet. Mr. Speaker, our plan was a 5-year plan. It wasn't a no plan like what they had. Mr. Speaker, the University of Guyana will be free to Guyanese. It will become free before 2025. In the meanwhile, scholarships are offered to Guyanese, ordinary Guyanese, to have the opportunity to go to the University of Guyana so that they may enhance their skills to fill the gaps that is so needed in the public sector. And that is what PSM would do for human capacity building. Could you act like a leader and not be like a little league man? Mr. Speaker, there is some noise emanating from the leader of the opposition seat, but I find it, and you know, Mr. Speaker, I'm not even making this up. You know I'm not even making this up. This is a gentleman who finds that a handshake is a problem. This is a gentleman who finds shaking the president's hand a problem. Mr. Speaker, our government believes unwaveringly in the concept of one Guyana. This is why His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali was so keen on literally extending a hand of friendship to the likes of the Honorable Opposition Leader Aubrey Norton. But, Mr. Speaker, while we were disappointed that we were in no way surprised by the APNU AFC's reaction to our olive branch, we cannot expect a party that is so severely fractured from within to heal a nation that they actively tried to break. And let us not forget that people who have deep-seated beliefs and biases, that more than 40% of our entire population are people who are mentally lazy. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, as we will recall, the interview held with the honorable member Amanza Walton Desir that called that who she presumes to be the supporters of the PPP, and since we democratically won the elections, we have the majority, and since that means that it includes all ethnicities in Guyana, it is most ludicrous that you can possibly call these people mentally lazy. Possibly, and stand there assuming a feigned demeanor of care and compassion for Guyanese. And then tried through many statements and a very blunt statement and so many others coming out to say, that is not what I meant. It was being misconstrued. Mr. Speaker, it was an insult. It was a total insult to our people. A total insult to our Guyanese people.
Honorable Minister, you will need an extension to continue, so you can conclude.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Singh. Minister, you may continue towards your conclusion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For 2022, a total of... Let's hear of the awardees of the Gold Scholarship as we go along. 167 awardees were from Region 1 in 2022, 558 from Region 2, 1,429 from Region 3, 3,090 from Region 4, 635 from Region 5, 894 from Region 6, 191 from Region 7, 46 from Region 8, 143 from Region 9, and 527 from Region 10. Mr. Speaker, the PPPC government just doesn't preach about inclusivity. And being a one Guyana, our talks are accompanied by genuine actions. And we are not afraid to come here with our evidence because these numbers, Mr. Speaker, are free from prejudice and bias. So much so that we have many well-known members of the opposition who are furthering their education through GOAL, including, of course, 2 opposition members and Mr. Darren Wade that continues to shoot, again, flatulence. Even though they come here and criticize everything we do, they too benefit from our programs and policies. But I do wish the hypocrisy would end. I wish my colleagues in the opposition would realize that sometimes it is okay to hit the pause on negativity and consciously and support the initiatives that truly benefit our people. Instead, many of them will come here to predictably complain about everything. But let me make it lucidly clear. Guyana is developing at a rapid pace, and to satisfy the growing needs of the labor market, we need to act fast to produce the professionals that are required to take advantage of the growing opportunities. Moreover, the University of Guyana is centralized, and it does not offer online programs. It merely adapts to Zoom classes as a response to the coronavirus pandemic. While the University of Guyana is an excellent institution run by brilliant minds, we acknowledge that it has a far way to go, and the government is committed to providing the requisite support for its advance. That is why 3 points. More than $3 billion has been allocated to the University of Guyana for its enhancement in the 2023 budget. 3.7. It was conceptualized even before the 2020 elections, Mr. Speaker. That is the Gold Scholarship. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the Gold Scholarship, we continue to invest heavily in the provision of public service scholarships. For 2022, 420 persons were completing their scholarships program at a number of local institutions, including the University of Guyana and Carnegie School of Home Economics. Similarly, 1,221 persons will be continuing their scholarship studies beyond 2022. The training department, Mr. Speaker, as Guyana continues to prepare itself for the many opportunities that will come, it is important that we modernize and train and retrain our public servants to be as effective as possible. This responsibility lies with the training department of the Ministry of Public Service, which was recently revamped and has been functioning effectively to meet the needs of the public service. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, this year we have reintroduced the monitoring and evaluation system, which will of course assist all ministries and public sector agencies with their budgets and management of their spending. We also have the Center of Excellence for Information Technology, which continues to roll out its information technology program across government agencies, as well as now taking it into the communities. Mocha Arcadia was one of those communities that benefited from the Center of Excellence for Information Technology, where 16 persons graduated from and gained a certificate and were offered jobs with Qual Fund. So it wasn't just, yes. Well, it is more than you would have ever done, Mr. Norton. Mr. Speaker, we not only commit to train, but we commit to providing an income after training. And that is what we have done. Put monies into the pockets of our ordinary Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, with the budgetary allocation that we all have, you will see job creation across the country as we have promised. Mr. Speaker, with this and so much more in the days to come that we will hear, I commend this budget. I fully support this budget. And Mr. Speaker, I believe that it is what this nation needs to grow.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your presentation. Now our seventh speaker for today and the budget, the Honorable Member, Mr. Ganesh Mahipal.
Thank you very much.
You have 30 minutes plus 5.
Thank you very much, Comrade Speaker. And I've noticed that the Honorable Dr. Jennifer Westford took her leave. But I wanted to say that after listening to my good friend, Honorable Sonia Parag, and knowing that Honorable Dr. Jennifer Westford is a current Member of Parliament, I believe it is in the best interest of the PPP and the people of Guyana to bring back Jenny and let Sonia take a back seat. Comrade Speaker, I rise before you today as a proud representative of the people, standing on the righteous side of this honorable assembly, and it is my privilege to make my humble contribution to Budget 2023. I would like to begin by offering my congratulations to the competent staff at the Ministry of Finance for their hard work in preparing this budget. However, as I listened to the senior minister within the Office of the President with responsibilities for finance presentation, it became clear that the utopian rhetoric and clever use of statistics do not mask the reality of the dire state of our nation's people under the current PPPC government. Mr. Speaker, we are now entering the third full year of this current regime's tenure, albeit installed, and by the end of 2023, our country will expend a staggering $1.8 trillion. This is an unprecedented amount of money for such a short period of time. Yet the question remains, what is the quality of life for our citizens? This budget gives the true meaning of the quote, "Don't judge a book by its cover. Read the pages and know the real story." I implore the members of this regime to set aside politics for a moment and consider the plight of the ordinary citizens. Look at the vendors who were forced out of their livelihoods in the dead of night, while you slept comfortably in your beds with security at your homes. Look at the deplorable state of the roads in housing schemes where people with small vehicles are forced to bear the expense of maintenance, while you parade around in luxury vehicles paid for by taxpayers. Look at the people of Mocha and speak to the ordinary man and woman on the street and ask them how they are coping under your regime. As political leaders, it is crucial that they leave the comfort of their air-conditioned offices and truly immerse themselves in the struggles of their constituents. They must hear firsthand the tales of inadequate healthcare delivery, the scarcity of essential medicines, the lengthy wait times for medical attention. They must listen to the grievances of political appointees in the regional health system and how their actions are making the lives of career public servants unbearable. They must learn about the challenges facing the University of Guyana and how lecturers are seeking to flee from this broken education system. They must hear the concerns of teachers who are lacking adequate classroom facilities. They must listen to the thousands of people who have already paid the Ministry of Housing and Water for plots of land but remain in the dark about their location due to a lack of demarcation and infrastructure. They must hear about the trucks that have been distributing baby chicks and chicken feed to PPP party members from the $300 million Small Business Development Fund, and listen to the complaints of the ministry's staff members about the lack of structure in place for spending that money. They must hear the concerns of the people on the street who have dubbed Honorable Suzanne Rodriguez as the wealthiest minister in government and her ties to contractors and companies. They must hear the complaints of Region 8 RDC about Honorable Pauline Sokai's presence at every RDC meeting in the Pacaraimas, instructing the council on what to do and what not to do. They must hear the voices of the staff members at Human Services and Social Security who no longer wish for Honorable Vindhya Prasad's presence. I urge you all to listen to the voices of the ordinary citizens and to ask yourself a simple question. Will there be a place in heaven for you when your time in this world is done? When the people you are entrusted to serve and make life easier for are suffering under the weight of this punishing cost of living? Will God be pleased to know that you are living a life of luxury on the backs of taxpayers who are struggling to make ends meet? The PPPC regime's tyrannical behavior in their deliberate exclusion of the main political opposition in the budget creation process is a blatant violation of the principles of good governance and democratic consultation, as outlined in Article 13 of our Constitution. Their actions are a blatant disregard for the voices and opinions of the more than half of the population who continue to support the opposition. This tyrannical behavior is not only a violation of our democratic principles, but it is also a squandering of taxpayers' hard-earned dollars, instead of fostering an inclusive democracy that truly represents the will of the people. This regime, since 2020, is defined by mismanagement and corruption and is leading our country to the brink of a class crisis that threatens our future prosperity as one people, one nation, one destiny. The discovery of significant reserve presents an incredible opportunity for Guyana to secure its future. But this government's inability to manage our resources responsibly means that the benefits of the economic boom are not being felt by the absolute majority of Guyanese people. It is a travesty that under the PPPC, the people of Guyana have not seen the fruits of their own labor and resources. The widening wealth gap and increased poverty in our nation is a dire result of this government's failure to prioritize the welfare of its citizens. As we stand on the cusp of this economic boom, it is crucial that we demand accountability and transparency from the squatters in government in the management of these resources. The future of Guyana depends on it. We need a legal government that prioritizes the needs of all citizens, regardless of race, ethnicity, or socio-economic status, and uses this economic opportunity to spur inclusive growth, reduce poverty, and create jobs for all. Together, we must demand a government that works for the people and not just for the select few. It is clear that the PPPC government's rhetoric of one Guyana is nothing but a shallow political ploy. Their actions reveal the harsh reality that we are in fact 7 distinct Guyanas, each with its own set of struggles and injustices. The Amerindians have their own Guyana. The Europeans have theirs. The Africans have the worst. The Portuguese have their own. The East Indians have the best. The Chinese have their own. And the mixed race is struggling to find theirs. The recent treatment of the African community at Mocha Cane View on the east bank of Demerara is a prime example of this government's disregard for the rights and well-being of certain groups in our society. The sight of children crying, mothers weeping, and families being forcibly removed from their homes by government bulldozers and excavators is nothing short of a human rights violation. I saw with my own eyes the ruthless and indiscriminate destruction of the homes and livelihood of innocent people by the operator of the excavation equipment. The operator, with no regard for the lives and well-being of the people, demolished homes and cruelly crushed everything in its path, in some cases even digging a hole and burying the personal belongings of the affected families. The sight was truly heart-wrenching. As I watched helplessly, a hard-working businesswoman, who is also a mother, lost her home and her business in a matter of minutes. The destruction of a large number of Banks DIH beverage products was also witnessed, a loss that was totally unnecessary. Comrade Speaker, this is not the kind of society we should be building. We cannot allow this kind of inhumanity and disregard for the rights of the people to continue. It is a sobering reminder of the urgent need for real change and a government that truly represents the interests of the people, not the interests of the powerful and the elite. We must work together to create a society where everyone has the opportunity to live a dignified life, free from the fear of losing their home or their livelihood. Our children, sir, deserve better. But let it be known that the PPPC regime is not immune to the power of the people. They are squatting in office, and it is only a matter of time before they are removed from power by the will of the Guyanese people. The excavators and bulldozers that were used to displace the Mocha Cane View community will one day be turned against this regime, and they will finally understand the true meaning of one Guyana, a Guyana where all of its people are treated with dignity and respect. Comrade Speaker, before I go further in my discourse on the continued betrayal of the people of Guyana by the corrupt and irresponsible PPPC regime, let me take a moment to recognize Honorable Ashni Singh. Honorable Minister, I applaud your belated recognition of the importance of paying the regional chairman and regional vice chairman their salary increases for the year 2021 and 2022 in December of 2022. However, it is a testament to the failure of this government that such basic responsibilities had not been fulfilled until now. The continued neglect of the mayors and deputy mayors is a glaring example of the government's misplaced agenda and lack of empathy for the people they were elected to serve. I trust the Honorable Minister will see the wisdom in paying the salary increases to our mayors and deputy mayors soonest, for they, like regional chairmen and regional vice chairmen, are also full-time servants of the people, elected by the people for the people. Before addressing the issues at the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development, it is imperative that I bring attention to the deplorable behavior of the PPPC regime within the Public Accounts Committee of Guyana. As we all know, the PPPC the PAC, the Public Accounts Committee, is a crucial mechanism for holding the government accountable and ensuring transparency in their actions. For decades, the committee has met statutorily every Monday with a quorum of any 3 members. However, in their typical dictatorial fashion, the PPPC regime has maliciously altered the quorum, requiring 2 members from the government, 2 from the opposition, and the chairman. Mr. Speaker, this change has resulted in the cancellation of 6 meetings due to the government's absence, stifling the committee's ability to function. The Irfan Ali's PAC, the Carl Greenidge's PAC.
The references to the president?
Sir, I'm referring to the PAC that he chaired in.
Yeah, but you're creative enough to say the PAC of this particular parliament.
The PAC that was chaired by His Excellency, President Ali, Carl Greenidge's PAC, and Valda Lawrence's Honorable Member PAC, has all worked tirelessly to complete the examination of the Auditor General's report and ensure the PAC is up to date. But this current PAC, with Honorable Ejil and Teixeira, who always would say they have the number on their side, is moving at snail's pace. The only logical conclusion is that the PPPC regime does not want the people of Guyana to know about the numerous financial irregularities, abnormalities, and abnormalities documented in the Auditor General's report of 2020, 2021, and soon coming 2022. But rest assured, Mr. Speaker, the people will know. We on this side of the House will continue to expose the wicked, stinking, and dirty actions of the PPPC regime and hold them accountable for their misdeeds. The Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development is a crucial aspect of our governance structure, with a direct impact on all 10 administrative regions of our country. It is imperative that this ministry is led by competent, professional, and empathetic ministers. However, what we have instead are 2 ruthless, radical political hacks who are hell-bent on causing chaos and confusion within the ministry and at all levels of local government. They are actively undermining the structure and system at 4th Street, Kingston, and Camp Street, and wreaking havoc at the regional democratic councils, municipalities, and all 70 NDCs. Their actions are a clear indication of their lack of qualification, integrity, and utter disregard for the well-being of our citizens. Their leadership is a disgrace to our country, and they must be held accountable for their actions. The Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development in 2022 received a staggering $10 billion in funding, and after supplementary funds, spent over $11.5 billion. Despite this significant allocation of resources, the ministry failed to meet key objectives and deliver on vital projects. In 2022, the ministry was supposed to train 665 staff in specific areas, but only 155 were trained. Additionally, the local government sector strategy and sanitation sector plan were not completed, and no monitoring and evaluation framework were established. The ministry also fell short on infrastructure development, with 14 new projects planned, but only 9 completed, and 29 existing infrastructure projects planned for improvement, but only 7 improved. Furthermore, none of the local democratic organs saw the implementation of ISM technical standards for waste management, and none of the 6 regions completed their regional strategic plan. This is a clear indication of financial mismanagement and raises serious questions about the ministry's ability to effectively use the funds allocated to them. Now, in 2023, this ministry is requesting approval for a staggering $19 billion in funds. The people of Guyana deserve transparency and accountability for the ministry's underperformance in 2022 and must be provided with answers as to how the funds allocated in 2022 were spent. It is clear that the Minister of Local Government and Regional Development, Honorable Nigel Dharamlal, should take responsibility for this failure and resign. It is time for a change and new leadership to take the reins and effectively manage the ministry's resources and deliver on the key projects that positively impact our society. The role of the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development is to provide guidance and oversight to ensure accountability and transparency in the work of all regional democratic councils, municipalities, and NDCs. However, what we are currently seeing is a dictatorial approach by the ministers in the ministry who are issuing instructions to administrative heads of these elected councils. This is unacceptable, and these councils are elected by the people and are meant to serve the people. The ministers should instead be providing guidance and support for the councils to function effectively, rather than undermining their autonomy and authority. It is crucial that the administrative heads of these councils take guidance from their elected councils, as they are the ones who have been mandated by the people to govern. The current state of affairs is a violation of democratic principles and an affront to the sovereignty of our citizens. Comrade Speaker, I am in contact with all 10 regional democratic councils, 10 municipalities, and 70 neighborhood democratic councils, as well as established community development councils. I can confidently say that none of them were consulted on the creation of this budget, despite the government's rhetoric of one Guyana. I have received numerous complaints from regional executive officers who are politically aligned to the People's Progressive Party about being instructed to include certain projects in this budget without their input or consent. I have been told by a regional executive officer that he can no longer handle the pressure of being dictated to by phone calls and WhatsApp messages from Anand Prasad and Nigel Dharamlal, honorable of course. Comrade Speaker, their time in office is coming to a fast end. But the least I can advise right now is for them to be more respectful and humane in their treatment of their fellow citizens. Nigel and Anand Prasad, honorable of course, treat others as you wish them to treat you. Comrade Speaker, as recent as the other day, Minister Dharamlal shamelessly attempted to arrogate powers that he does not possess when he issued Order 40 of 2022, later amended to Order 50 of 2022, engaging in the reprehensible and undemocratic act of gerrymandering. 19 local authority areas have been affected by the nefarious changes he made to the boundaries and seat allocations of municipalities and NDCs. It was never his duty to demarcate the constituency's boundaries, yet he went ahead and did it nonetheless, flagrantly disregarding the rule of law and the democratic process. The demarcation of constituency boundaries is the sole responsibility of GCOM. However, interference in the work of GCOM is nothing new to the PPPC. His illegal gerrymandering was rightfully nipped in the bud, but it is now up to GCOM to disassociate themselves from this illegal Order 50 of 2022. GCOM must go into the affected areas and mark the boundaries clearly with the cooperation and able assistance of the residents of the respective areas. The PPPC's continuous attempt to manipulate and subvert democracy will not be tolerated any longer. The Fiscal Transfers Act clearly states that the annual subvention or fiscal transfers from central government to local authorities shall be based primarily on a set of conditions and stipulated performance indicators, with half of the allocation being distributed equally among all local authorities, and the remaining half being allocated based on factors such as population size, geographic area, and tax collection rate. However, under the current PPPC regime, it appears that Georgetown is being disproportionately affected and the mayor is being targeted for not engaging in malpractices with this regime. Even when we look at flooding, when the bishop fails, they want to blame the pandit. The PPPC's interest seems to lie in favoring friends, families, and favorites, rather than fulfilling their responsibility to provide financial resources to local authorities to assist them in discharging their functions and responsibilities, as outlined in the Act. This is a clear violation of the Fiscal Transfers Act and a disregard for the well-being of Georgetown and its citizens. Comrade Speaker, like last year, I call again on the Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Anil Nandalal, and ask, don't you believe it is time for you to resign? Don't you believe you have failed the people of this country? Don't you believe that you have not satisfied your job as Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs? Sir, like last year, it is him who I must blame because it is he who must guide. Or is it just that they do not take guidance from Comrade Nandalal? Is it that the ministers of local government and regional development are intellectually circumcised to the point where they don't understand the AG's guidance? Or is it you, Honorable Attorney General, that does not have the testicular fortitude and intellectual aptitude to boldly speak out and speak up at cabinet meetings? Is that how dunce all of them are and not listening to you, Honorable AG? Comrade Speaker, I bring to your attention the issue of regional development. Last year, I highlighted the decrease in funds allocated in Regions 4 RDCs, line item 6211, which is specifically designated to assist elected councillors in carrying out their functions and provide meaningful representation in what should be a true democratic process. This year, the same happened, and now Regions 10 and 7 are also facing similar injustice. As you may recall, last year, Region 10 received $40.5 million on the line item 6211. However, this year, the region is slated to receive $47 million, an increase of only $6.5 million. While this may seem like a significant increase, it is important to note the hypocrisy in this allocation. Last year, when the allocation was $40.5 million, the statutory expenses for stipends for tushaus and councillors amounted to $7.56 million. This left the chairman and councillors with only $32.94 million to work with. In 2023, despite the high cost of living increase, the allocation is $47 million. But the statutory expenses for stipends has also increased to $14.76 million. So when you subtract, sir, the statutory increase for the 2023 allocation, there is a significant decrease in what remains and what the councillors and chairmen have to work with. Region 4 and 7 are faced with similar issues. For Region 4, we see an overall increase from $18 million to $26 million. But when you subtract the statutory stipend for councillors, Tushau and Deputy Tushau, the remainder is $13 million, a reduction again from last year. The same applies for Region number 7. When you do the subtraction of the statutory expenses for Region number 7, a significant decrease again for the chairman and councillors. So, Comrade Speaker, we have a budget that is beautiful on its cover, but the pages inside, when we read them, it tells a different story. The regions won by the AP and UAFC continues to suffer with a decrease of resources, but the PPPC controlled regions all have significant increases. Yet this double standard, dictatorial, devious, diabolical, dangerous, and because they don't care regime want us to believe they are committed to equity and democracy. It is clear that there has been no real increase in the allocations for Regions 4, 7, and 10 RDC line item 6211. And I urge this government to re-evaluate their allocation of funds to ensure that our elected officials have the resources they need to effectively represent their communities. Mr. Speaker, for those who are listening to these debates and may not know what is a slush fund, let me define the term for them. A slush fund is a reserve of money used for illicit purposes, especially political bribery. When I read the pages of this budget, it is my firm position that over $15 billion are in various line items as slush funds.
Honorable Member, you will need an extension. Before you do that, thanks for the definition of slush fund, because I'm circulating once again all the unparliamentary language. And the meaning you just ascribed there, a lot of it is included in these. So we need an extension so that the honorable member can complete in cleaning up this presentation to conclusion.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Comrade Speaker. Comrade Speaker, I move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, honourable member. You have 5 minutes from 406.23.
Thank you very much, Comrade Speaker. When I read the pages of this budget, it is my firm position that over $15 billion are in various line items as slush funds. And this was found with the naked eyes. So just imagine how high that sum will be when we examine the estimates next week. Time, unfortunately, will not allow me to deal with all of the line items, but let me touch on a couple. First, there is a $300 million for Small Business Development Fund. I challenge Minister Unesh Waldron, honorable of course, to provide to this House the beneficiaries' legal framework and acceptable financial practice that was used last year to spend the same amount that was approved last year. I am certain there is none, and if there is, nowhere does it require calling PPP party card-bearing members at 5 o'clock in the morning to some secluded location and give them chicken and chicken feed and say, go do business, rear chicken and sell. This is a slush fund. Secondly, the Men on Mission that Honorable Kwame McCoy is a part of. A total of $500 million is allocated there. This entire country thought that this was an initiative announced by President Ali with cooperation from corporate Guyana, contributing to the uplifting of people but now $500 million of taxpayers' money is towards it. I challenge the government to table in this House the criteria for assistance and how this sum will be disbursed in keeping with the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act of 2003. We have the SLED program, Sustainable Livelihood Entrepreneurship Development. Also, and we know that there is no established criteria for disbursement. I see another line item dubbed Safety Net for Vulnerable Populations and some rural enterprise development, all with huge sums of monies, but with no established criteria and proper accountability measures to show transparency and inclusivity. These funds are for families, friends, and favorites of the PPPC cabal. Guyana is in serious trouble, Comrade Speaker, and our children and grandchildren will suffer. Guyanese, if we want Guyana to grow, the People's Progressive Party must go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Mr. Mahipal. And now for the contribution of the Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Public Works, Deodat Indar.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to present some remarks in support of the budget 2023. I am a little disappointed that the honorable member who just spoke, the Honorable Mahipal, has left, because I intend to answer every aspect of his speech. And for those speakers that came before him on the opposition side. And I will also ask the Honorable Amanza Walton Desir if she can remain, because I would like to answer some of her utterances. Do not run. We are at a fight here. Mr. Speaker, in my studies when I was in economics class, I came across a term they call hero syndrome. Mr. Speaker, I want to address the issue of mock to start with. Now, that particular issue, the notices, the meetings, the offers, everything were communicated to the people that were squatting on the alignment. Mr. Speaker, the opposition leader, the Honorable Aubrey Norton, went there and told the people not to leave and to carry up their offers to figures that do not resemble any reality. Mr. Speaker, hero syndrome is this. It's like a fireman try to start a fire, stoke the fire, and then when the house burned down, come with the hose and try to save it and call himself a hero in the process. That is what the Honorable Leader of the Opposition
Mr.
did
Speaker,
with a team with
Mr.
him.
Speaker,
Honorable
the
Member
minister is
Musoli.
imputing the leader of the opposition is not here, and some
Well,
of his sentiments are clearly
Who
he
tell
has
him to
no
get up?
evidence. If he can produce the
Who told him
evidence
to
of
get
what
up?
he's saying,
Honorable
go right ahead.
Minister, I'm listening to him and then I'll rule. Yes. Honorable Minister, you may continue.
Did
Don't
I
think-
impugn the opposition member?
You haven't
Leader?
infracted on any standing orders. Go ahead.
Please do not disturb me. I did not disturb the Honorable Member Mahipal just now. I am telling you, Mr. Speaker, that is exactly what they did. They tried to play hero, and they are the ones who told those people to stay there. That's the first thing about Mako. The second thing I want to talk about is this diatribe that I just heard from the Honorable Member Mahipal about PAC, the Public Accounts Committee. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what they are doing. They have concocted in their mind, and the most evil thing they want to do is that the years that the APNU and the AFC were in government, the financials for those years from the Auditor General report are tabled, and they want to rush the thing. They don't want timely examination of all the corruption under their government. So what they want to do.
Okay, Minister, I'm going to take a firm stand on some of these words, and corruption is one we don't use. Yeah, I just said I'm circulating all of the words again.
Mr. Speaker, I am happy that the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee is here, because that is what they are doing. They are rushing the examinations so that we cannot examine it. Mr. Speaker, I came from a finance background. All my life I spent in finance. When you go through the Auditor General report, you will see it in there. It is plain as day. The Auditor General report is one that is published and handed to you, Mr. Speaker. The Auditor General report is handed to the Speaker of this House. It is posted on their website. It is there for public distribution. So who is hiding what? There's nothing to hide. It is out there for the world to see. Another member leaving? I'm sorry. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Mahipal called two of my colleagues disgrace. The Honorable Anand and Minister Nigel. Mr. Speaker, the APNU and the AFC, that bunch is a disgrace when they try to steal the whole country. That is the disgrace that we face. They are the disgrace. They have disgraced this country and tarnished the image of this country. We are building it back now. Don't come here and lecture us about how to run a country or run a ministry. If we didn't know, the people of this country would not have put us in government, but they voted us and put us in government. He's talking about accountability. Imagine the APNU, a PNC minister, is talking about accountability. When we asked the former finance minister what were the 18 million he had to disclose, he said it was a gift. Never disclosed it until somebody leaked a report. It was leaked, and they're talking about accountability. Where did they hide the $92 billion overdraft that they had in the Bank of Guyana? They hid it. They hid it in the financial statements under receivables. They have a creditor stashed away in receivables. Mr. Speaker, let me explain to you the evil concoction in that arrangement. Anytime you owe, the central government is to be paid by the Bank of Guyana for current overdraft. It's supposed to be in creditors. They took a creditor, it's a credit balance. They took the creditor and put it on a receivable, which is a debit balance, reducing the net assets of the bank. That is what they have done. You're talking about accountability? Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry that the mayor is not here, but I saw the Region 4 chairman here. They're talking about we're not allowing the mayor to do his job. I'm sorry. If the mayor was doing his job, I'm sorry he's not here. But if he was doing his job, we want to be, myself and Minister Edgell, patching all of the streets in Georgetown, fixing all of the drains. His function. His function. We are fixing everything, all of the holes. We have teams everywhere you go. Check. Right now we're going down to Sandy Bob Street. That we're fixing there. We're in this street, this corner, this drain. We are doing the work. Billions of dollars we are spending on the Ministry of Public Works to do what he's supposed to function as. So I don't understand that we're not allowing him to yeah. I don't understand that we're not allowing him to function. We're glad if he could function, but he don't. Mr. Speaker, I want to touch on this thing that I heard throughout all of the speakers on the opposition side about racial discrimination. Mr. Speaker, every time you find an opposition that is bankrupt for strategy, they raise the boogeyman about racism. Every time. The only strategy they have is racism. That cannot be. How long are you going to ride that scooter? How long are you going to ride that scooter? Mr. Speaker, I can tell you by testament, I am on the ground. When we go out on the ground, the love for the ministers, the love for the president and the vice president is shown when people run to them to take pictures, to hug them, to kiss them. In all the communities across this country. So I don't understand that Mr. Mahipal, the honorable member, paint this mosaic of things that are breaking down. That is totally untrue, misleading. He should be ashamed of himself. Mr. Speaker, I want to go back to two other speakers that spoke. The Honorable Nima Flubes about Maka. I'm going back to Maka. The reason I'm going back to Maka is because, Mr. Speaker, we built the Bornum Boulevard. The People Progressive Party civic government built the Bornum Boulevard. It was promised by their government when they were there to build it, and it never was done. Just like many other things, promises never kept by the AP and UFC. Mr. Speaker, we also built the Barnwell Road and another road, and we'll continue to build more roads in the community. So when we find statements like this coming out from the leader of the opposition, and Mr. Speaker, I will lay these over. He called it the leader of the opposition called it what? A dead meat budget. He called it a dead. This is the statement he put out. He's misplaced. He doesn't understand economics. He doesn't understand managing a country. He doesn't understand when you set a template for industrialization, you have to spend and build it out. That is what he don't understand. And I'm not in the mood to explain it to him. The problem with they don't understand, you have a country and we treat the oil and gas, most of these opposition MPs, they treat the oil and gas sector like a stepchild. It cannot be. It's a major part of the structure of the economy. It is a major part. It is driving the economy a lot. The non-oil sector is performing well. That is the job-creating sectors, like agriculture, like health, like education, like all of the other sectors that are creating jobs, construction and so on. But the oil and gas sector now come and penetrated all of those sectors in a cascading effect. You have to take it into consideration. You have to. So we can't treat it as a stepchild. He's saying that a lot of money has been placed in infrastructure. You know, the Honorable Minister Member Patterson, former Minister of Public Works, he has gone too. It seems to me like they don't like when I speak. But the Honorable Member, came to this house a few moons ago and spoke like if he fixed all the roads in the country. Like he fixed all the roads, so where did all this money and spend? Mr. Speaker, for the record, Public Works Ministry alone in 2022 built over 1,100 roads. 1,100 roads. That is broken, dilapidated infrastructure in the industry, in all the communities, and we built it. All the communities, including where you live, and where you live. Because if you all tell me where I live, I'll tell you the road that I built here. If the opposition leader was here, we are building a street, right, Minister Achel? Prince William Street. In Victory Valley, we're building. In Albaiston, we're building. In Denham, still we're building. In Sophia, we're building. In Belladrum, we're building. Every African Guyanese community that is densely populated, there are war going on now. Now. So there is not disparity in the distribution of resources. That is a total mistruth, misleading, design to do enthusiastic corruption of public good. That is what they are doing. Mr. Speaker, I also saw the AFC put out a statement about this budget and must-haves. I don't know what to say about this statement, Mr. Speaker, but I'll just read 2 points that they have inside. One of them, free education at the University of Guyana. That is what they want to see. Mr. Speaker, this is the very party that was in government when they increased the tuition for the students at the university by 35% in 2019. I have also dispatched that. I've also dispatched that news article to the clerk to pass the records over. They increased the fees and now coming here and talking about free education. The AFC, they have another one here. Increasing old age pension. Are the ones who put tax on water and remove the subsidies from water and electricity for the old age people. And coming here and talking about that. This is a statement they put out. There's another one they put here. Monthly electricity subsidy. Oh my God. They're the one who put VAT on electricity. They put them there asking, they now come like they now break out of some tomb and crawl out and see a new reality. Mr. Speaker, this thing is duplicitous of the highest order. They went on, reduce VAT to 12%. Mr. Speaker, I used to lecture and I used to do consultations for the Guyana Revenue Authority in a previous life. I used to train their people. When the tax law went in for VAT, a number of items was in the standard rated list, which you have to pay a percentage, 16% or whatever it is, or 14, and then there are a zero rated list. What the APNU government do is take a whole host of things that people use in a daily life, kitchen items, and put all of them on the standard rated list, creating a massive sweeping tax revenue. They are talking about tax, and they're talking about inflation. I am telling you, Mr. Speaker, in 2014, when the PPP government left office, they left with a revenue base of $135 billion. When the APNU took over in 2015 to 2020, at the end of 2020, it was $226 billion, a $91 billion increase in taxes. So they were asking you to name the tax. Don't name the tax. Look how much money that was collected extra from people, businesses. That is like 125,000 per person more the tax people. So they're asking for the 200 tax. It's just showing up in the numbers and the budget that they brought to this house. And this is anyone out there, here, just pick up any budget in their time and just look at the revenue structure and you'll see what I'm talking about. Mr. Speaker, I also saw one, Mr. Ford also put out a statement talking, Mr. will be pressed for time. So I'll go some of the other things that I would like to speak. Mr. Ford, I now found it. Mr. Ford, Honorable Member, Shadow Attorney General, his statement. This, I don't know, this belongs in the Hague Bush dump site. This statement, the Hague's Bush. He's talking about education has fallen. They're the ones, their government took away the school grant. They're the ones, and they come here and asking for them to put out statements like if they now show up on the scene. He's also talking about corruption. Mr. Speaker, you said don't talk about corruption. But how am I to explain myself when the entire Caribbean said Guyana was one of the most corrupt places in the during the period of the AP and UAFC government? It is. Mr. Speaker, this budget here, and I brought it with me. I don't write speeches. I brought it with me. They are saying in here of slush fund. If the honorable member can point to the page, I'll be happy. I'll show the whole country or the whole world. There is nothing like that in here. Nothing. And it's there for people to read. You call it slush fund. You call it slush fund. There's no slush fund in here. These are actionable items, programs to deliver for the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, I heard the Honorable Member Amanza Walden Desir spoke of sea and river defense. Something that she has absolutely no idea about. Mr. Speaker, when we came into government, what's the place up in Maikoni? Danzig. My first day in government, I was in Danzig as a minister. Thousands of acres of farm that people can't plant up to today because salt water destroy the soil. We have put billions of dollars from 2020, 2021, and 2022. Now 2023 is 4.9 billion. I want to say that the entire coastland, all the island, Leg 1, Wakenham, Andrews, Zeeborg, Anna Katrina, Iflot, on the Maikoni stretch, in Barbies, everywhere on the coastal front, we are doing sea defense work. So we don't need her to come here and lecture us about sea defense. She's out of treasury for sea defense has increased in the 2023 budget. It is a foreign element that went down. I just wanted to make that clear. Mr. Speaker, I also want to talk about what she said about truth to Guyanese people. The Honorable Member Walden Desir, about truth to Guyanese people. Truth to Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, I was not a politician. I never came into power. I was a private citizen. I watched for 5 long months in 2020, lie after lie, mistruth after mistruth, peddled by the AP and UAFC. How they win the elections. Or on parliamentary language? Sorry. Please strike that from the record, sir. This issue about the lands as it will be, or the co-op lands, I want to answer that. How the honorable member know is only Afro-Guyanese will be this, lands will be displaced. Don't Indian, don't Portuguese, don't mixed races part of those co-ops too? How is that something that a member of parliament could come here and talk about only Afro-Guyanese will be displaced? Everybody from all different races, all walks of this land are part of this. Everything is the boogeyman of racism, everything. There's nothing else in terms of ideas, nothing else. Mr. Speaker, they talk, the opposition benches speak about always mind the business. And we know everything about them. Mr. Speaker, the Bible, one of the oldest texts, tell you that you must know, as a good commander, you got to know your enemy. You have to know your opposition. You have to study them. Any good commander will understand that. So if anybody minding anybody business, that is the game. That is the life. Because everybody over there is mind me business. I put up my house and so on Facebook and so. Mr. Speaker, I want to talk a little about infrastructure. Infrastructure in this budget Mr. Speaker, the Democrats Harbor Bridge carries a price tag of about $206. The roads program, we have about $38.5 billion in miscellaneous roads, which is the community roads that we're building. This year, Mr. Speaker, all of them schemes, what they were talking about, they never did no work, Mr. Speaker, in those schemes. When we came into government, we went to Tushin, we went to Zillot, we went to number 77, we did some in Farm, we did all of the housing scheme, Parafate Harmony, we went in all of them and started building roads, and there's much more to be done. So this year, under that figure, you will see a massive amount of road programs to build out this country. They rightly said that we are an oil and gas economy. We got about $208 billion in terms of oil funds in this budget to support it. And it's going into the community. That is why His Excellency himself is leading that. Going to the community, seeing what is happening and putting the interventions. And this year we'll build more roads than last year, Mr. Speaker. Over 1,200 roads we'll be building throughout this country. Every community will see development. Every community will see development. So for them to come here and say it's big on infrastructure, what else do you have to do? You're building a country. How do you build it? Mr. Speaker, which brings me to the other thing. You see, the economic philosophy of the APNU is what is troubling me. They prefer to put the money in the current side of the budget, which they've been doing from 2015 to 2020. They've been bloating the current side of the budget, and they have minuscule amount of capital expenditure. The capital expenditure, Mr. Speaker, is for the roads, it's for the bridges, it's for the hospital, it's for the schools. 1 year, this year alone, we have $387.5 billion as capital spend in this total budget estimates here. That is equivalent to more than the whole 5 years put together in a single year. And we are not shying away from the spending. You have to spend. You have to spend. Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about poverty. I keep hearing they talking about the poor and poor people. All of the members on the opposition side. Mr. Speaker, whenever we go and the mom program what they talk about just now, most of those things go to all elder people who can't afford a house, who ain't got a roof, people who are the downtrodden, the poorest of our class. That program goes to helping people like that in our society, the forgotten, that they did not do anything for. That is what that money will be addressing. But I want to talk about poverty. The report that they keep quoting is a 2019 report under their government about the 48% poverty line, people under poverty. It's the 2019 report. So I don't know, they come here and like foreign to this idea. Mr. Speaker, I want to spend a little time on...
Minister, could you just give us a title page and the note, because it's been often quoted, so I'd like it for the record.
I want to talk a little about inflation and cost of living. It seems these days everybody's talking about, like if it's Guyana alone and it's the government's doing. Mr. Speaker, there's 186 page here. This report, I will send it to the Parliament. This is the World Economic Outlook, and the title of this document is Countering the Cost of Living Crisis. It's a document done by the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. This document, every page on it speaks about inflation. Every page. In every country. Mr. Speaker, Guyana, we had 7.2 at the end of 2022. 7.2%. Our neighbor right next door to Molson Creek in Suriname was 35% inflation rate. Next door, we're fighting with Essequibo, Venezuela. They are 220%. Mr. Speaker, so I don't understand. They are telling us, it seems like Guyana is an island of excellence in the sea of mediocrity. We are connected. 80% of the global trade goes through the marine traffic. 80% is goods moving by ships that we import. So if there are inflation in the country that manufactures them, obviously it will impact us. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica, 9.5% inflation. Barbados, 10% inflation. The Netherlands, 12.8% inflation. The UK, 11.3%. The US, 6.4%. Mr. Speaker, last year the US saw inflation rate reach the highest in 4 decades. So this is not an isolated problem, it's a global issue. And I wanted to make that point, because it seems that it's only us in Guyana is suffering from this inflation. Mr. Speaker, the World Bank publishes a document they call the Pink Sheets. And I will send this to your office as well. It's called the Pink Sheets. Mr. Speaker, I want to read a couple of them from this Pink Sheet to let the House understand and those who are viewing understand what is happening with commodities. Mr. Speaker, the crude was 61.4 US per barrel in 2019. At the end of 2022, it was 90.3 US per barrel, an increase of 47%. But Mr. Speaker, during the year of 2022, between April and June, crude price went to $110 per barrel, and that was a 79% increase. So when the energy costs increase, when prices for oil increase, it's a cascading effect throughout markets, all financial markets. It affects stocks, it affects everything. And that is not me saying it, that is the World Bank Pink Sheets saying it, not me. Mr. Speaker, I want to also talk about natural gas. In 2019, the US index at the spot price at Henry Hub in Louisiana, it was $2.57 per MMBTU. That's how they measure. That went up at the end of 2022 for 5.62 US dollars for MMBTU. That is a 118% increase. It's worse in Europe, Mr. Speaker. In Europe, the natural gas index in Europe had for 2019 $4.80, and it closed in 2022 at $39, a 712% increase. Natural gas is used for many, many things, including the manufacture of fertilizer. So, Mr. Speaker, fertilizer also went up. And that is what farmers use. Phosphate went up. Rock phosphate went up. Urea went up. Mr. Speaker, palm oil that you use to manufacture so many things, and we use in Guyana. We make shortening, we used to make bread, pastry, we have butter, we do all kind of things, cakes, everything. From $601 in 2019, at the end of 2022, it was $1,634, a 173% increase. You tell me how is that going to factor into the price of the good when it's selling on the shop? It must take the price up. Do we plant palm oil in Guyana? Do we refine it? No. Same thing for soybean oil. Soybean oil was 765 US for a metric ton in 2019. It gone up at the end of October of last year. It was 1,576 US per metric ton, a 106% increase. That is what is happening to the commodities market. And Mr. Speaker, again, it is not me. This is a World Bank report I'm calculating the percentages on. They issue the pink sheets. Mr. Speaker, urea went up by 159% from 2019 to the end of last year. Phosphate rock went up by 260% from 2019 to 2022 era. That is the kind of increases we have seen globally. It is not a Guyanese, it just affects Guyanese. And I wanted to talk about this inflation issue because they keep talking about cost of living, cost of living. Yes, cost of living gone up, but it's not here, it's everywhere. There are countries that are facing famine. The intervention that we have done in this budget, Mr. Speaker, is not a mere $5 billion. Allow me, Mr. Speaker, allow me. I just talked about the fuel. Do you know that all of that fuel that we use at GPL to power this country, all of it, we have to subsidize. The money is completely used up. We have not transferred that cost to the electricity bill, and it's costing our government $17 billion because we removed the excise tax from the bill, from the import costs. Mr. Speaker, the expansion of the part-time jobs program, that is direct employment for people. That is $10 billion. Mr. Speaker, other cost of living measures, which is the $5 billion what she was talking about, but it's not that alone. We also have the extension of the freight cost adjustment that we normally.
As we are on extension, you will need one to conclude.
Mr. Speaker, may I ask that the honorable member be given 5 minutes to conclude?
Thank you, Honorable Minister Parag. Honorable Minister Indar.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I was talking about the extension of the freight cost adjustment. Mr. Speaker, whenever you import something, the cost, insurance, and freight figure that is at the bottom that is used on an invoice to calculate and taxes are assessed by GRA and customs, we have adjusted the freight element because freight has gone up 7 times across the globe. 7 times what it was pre-pandemic levels. And what we have done is adjust that freight to pre-pandemic levels, so it reduced the amount of money that the taxes assessed at. That means that the amount of tax that a person pays to import something is reduced. So the landed cost in Guyana for any goods that they import is reduced. And that, Mr. Speaker, also costs us a lot of money too. The government is not getting anything from that. That's the next $6 billion is foregone there. So the adjustments total is about $38 billion to deal with effects of inflation. 38 billion, not 5. That is for persons who don't read the budget, Mr. Speaker. They come and they mumble, they pontificate on the podium, they talk things, and they run off and they get away out of the house. They don't want to hear the defense. Because every time they say something, this is wrong thing they say. Wrong thing. Mr. Speaker, I want to talk a little about this gloom and doom that the Honorable Mahipal painted about the Ministry of Local Government. This gloom and doom that he painted with all of these RDCs and so on, and the 70 NDCs. Mr. Speaker, I have known Minister Nigel and Minister Anand. They are workhorses. They're on the ground, they go to places, they'll never see ministers under the APNU government, never. They go to places everywhere in the interior to meet with our Amerindian folk, to bring intervention throughout the ministry. So he the honorable member can't speak about those, my colleagues, in that manner, because it's not true. It's not true. He also said, Mr. Speaker, if we feel good in our AC cars and so on, and our security guard, Mr. Speaker, the same goes for him and the APNU and the AFC government when they fire them 7,000 workers from Gaisuku. The same goes to them. The same thing, were they nice in the car and the house with security guard when those workers were struggling? When some of them commit suicide because they can't go home and take salary to their wife and to mind the children? Talk about mismanagement and corruption, that this budget have mismanagement and corruption. I don't know how we could come up with a conclusion like that. Mr. Speaker, when you do any analysis, a conclusion is based on a finding. There is no finding in here of that. So his conclusion is misplaced, totally misplaced. Mr. Speaker, he also spoke about roads and housing schemes. Farm, I think he must be living somewhere by farm. We are awarding contracts to go and do farm. The roads and farm. In Orstellin, in Parfait Harmony, in number 76, 77, Borbis. Every housing scheme will see work starting within the next week. Everyone. Manchester, everyone will see work starting in the next week. We are on the ground meeting with our people since the year start to roll out that roads program. So him to come here and talk about that, and they did not do anything. The reason we got to go and do it now because they did not do anything in the 5 years that they were in government, and come here to lecture us. Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude my remarks, and I want to thank you, and I want to also say thanks to the Ministry of Finance and the hard-working staff there that put this budget together. This budget is little above $751.9 trillion, $781.9 billion. It will see rapid implementation in 2023. We will put the work out. We will spend this money. We will get the programs to the people. We will help everyone. This budget is breaking barriers, Mr. Speaker. All the racial barriers, the economic barriers, the social barriers, it's designed to do that. Break down all of these barriers, designed to help every single man, woman, and child. That is what this budget is designed to do. So anybody come here and throw cold water on it is just mischief making. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And now for the Honorable Chief Whip of the Opposition, the Honorable Member, Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Comrade Speaker. Comrade Speaker, because of time, I will get right into the presentation. I will start on governance. Good governance is the process by which an administration allows or creates public institutions to function freely and effectively in the interest of all of the people in a given society. Effective public institution enables an administration to govern effectively, especially as it relates to the conduct of public affairs, the management of public resources, the protection of human rights, and more particularly, ethnic harmony. In the specific case of Guyana, it is in the interest of the administration to guarantee the human rights of the citizen, to protect them from the abuse and ensure equal protection under the law. Effective good governance would ensure that corruption is tamed and the activities of the state are conducted within a framework of the law. The true test of good governance is the degree to which it delivers on the promises of human rights, civil, cultural, economic, political, and social rights. My aim, Comrade Speaker, is to prove that we don't have good governance in Guyana. Corruption flourishes, and too many Guyanese do not enjoy the protection of the law. Often, our security forces seem to believe that they are a law unto themselves, at a time when the framework of the law must apply to the entire society, especially as it relates to the oil and gas sector. We seem, sir, to be retrogressing into lawlessness and a maladministration. Comrade Speaker, the failures of the PPPC administration regarding governance. 1, Parliament. there is clear need to make stronger and more effective. The opposite is the case. This is illustrated in the following developments. A, irregular holding of parliamentary committees. The Parliamentary Oversight Committee on Security, which is chaired by the Honorable Prime Minister of Guyana, has never met. The Standing Orders Committee, the Assemblies Committee, the Instrument Committee have all never met, and the scarcity in sittings of the National Assembly. B, emphasis.
Let me just correct you. I know you have a lot of never met, but you included one in never met, the Assemblies Committee. So you as Chief Whip should at least have those records accurate.
Noted your correction, Comrade Speaker. B, emphasis here, the changing in the need for a quorum of the Public Accounts Committee. This development has forced the PAC not to meet on several occasions. C, unfair rulings on matters brought to the House by the opposition. D, questions, motions, bills, and petitions brought to this House have never seen the light of day or never made it onto the order paper. After months, and after being so degutted, the spirit and intent are lost. For example, sir, a petition brought to this House by the Honorable Deputy Speaker on the 29th of December 2021 on behalf of the citizens asking this House to defer the passage of the NRF bill was never read. This House was told that it would be read at another sitting. It is now 1 year since, and to date, that petition has not seen the light of day. Democracy in Parliament is weakened. 2, relationships between the government and opposition. Comrade Speaker, they cannot be good governance unless there is the productive relationship between the opposition and government. This is not the case for the following reasons. A, refusal to engage the opposition on the identification of nominees for state boards. B, non-adherence to the constitutional procedures on the appointment of key constitutional bodies. Demerara Wave of January 10, 2023 attributed the following to the Chancellor, and I quote, "Chancellor is calling for the appointment of the Judicial Service Commission for judges to be appointed. Since the judiciary is working without its full complement of judges, currently 9 judges serve the entire Guyana. We are fed up of hearing that a Judicial Service Commission will be appointed." End of quote. C, no provision for the ongoing dialogue with the opposition, which represents 50% of the population. In most countries, sir, where good governance is an operating principle, there is constitutional and other provisions for an engagement with the opposition. D, engagement with the opposition is in the best interest of the country. It can promote stability at a time when it is needed. Given the investment the country is attracting as a result of the oil and gas sector and the ongoing infrastructural development. E, non-consultation of the main opposition on budget preparation and other important matters of national significance. Comrade Speaker, under the heading Communication with Citizens of Guyana, Comrade Speaker, effective good governance can only be obtained with an informed citizenry. This is hardly the case with the PPP government. Non-hosting of weekly press conferences by the President or Cabinet Secretary to inform Guyanese on key decisions by Cabinet. 4, discrimination. There is no place for discrimination in any regime of good governance. As there has been no good governance under the PPP, discrimination is widespread. A, continuous unlawful persecution of professional and ordinary Guyanese. For example here, sir, the removal of Dr. Vincent Adams from the EPA. B, sir, Kaichur News of January 23, 2023, and I quote, lack of transparency and accountability on the awarding of contracts. Most contracts are given to PPP supporters and one ethnic group. It is time that the government publishes the figures to show how many contracts are awarded. End of quote. C, continuous discrimination and victimization of ordinary Guyanese. My colleagues before me mentioned the Mocha residents. But, sir, to add insult to injury, one resident, particularly Miss Ellis, after witnessing the destruction of her home and standing in defense of same, she was arrested and taken to the Providence Stadium. 2 days after, sir, when she returned to work, to her place of work, only to receive a termination letter from the Ministry of Home Affairs. This is a single parent. Sir, the PPP and good governance. Comrade Speaker, good governance is difficult for the PPP for the following reasons. A, it is by its own constitution a Marxist-Leninist party. Years of democratic centralism has breed bad habits. The PPP always seeks to control all institutions in the society. B, it only negotiates when it can win. It is therefore a difficult partner for the opposition. C, because the PPP protective of its own constituents to the detriment of the society as a whole, it cannot engage in policies which are designed to help all sectors of the Guyanese society. And D, in its decade of existence, the PPP has not succeeded in governing on the basis of good governance. Comrade Speaker, I turn my attention to sports. Comrade Speaker, the Honorable Minister with responsibility for finance in his presentation stated, and I quote, "On our assumption of office, our sports and recreational facilities across the country were in a state of neglect. It was therefore no secret as to why Guyana could not have made substantial contribution to regional and international competition." Comrade Speaker, the facts I'm about to lay or share here in this House, I will ask the Honorable Minister to make what he said make sense. Comrade Speaker, it was under the APNU-AFC government that sports facilities across the country was upgraded. The Cliff Anderson Sports Hall, for example, received a multi-million-dollar injection, which saw the basketball court being completely refurbished after 23 years of neglect by the PPP. It was under the APNU-AFC administration that purchased the FIBA-approved basketball goal and state-of-the-art shot clocks, making the Cliff Anderson Sports Hall a FIBA-approved facility. Comrade Speaker, ask the Honorable Minister to make it make sense. It was under the APNU-AFC government who invested $20 million in 2016 and working along with the Federation for the first time in Guyana's history, hosted the Caribbean Basketball Confederation CBC under 16 championships, which saw 10 male and 7 female teams from across the Caribbean competing right here in Guyana. Minister, make it make sense. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, it was the APNU-AFC government that purchased to the tune US $160,000 or 32 million Guyana dollar the replay screen at the Providence Stadium. This made it possible for Guyana to now host any T20 and 50 overs international games at the National Stadium with real-time replay for spectators and officials alike. In that same year, sir, Guyana hosted for the first time in the country's history the ICC 2018 Women's T20 World Cup. Also, sir, it was under the coalition government that cricketers participated and won the under-19 regional tournament on multiple occasions, while the senior men team continued their dominance in the senior regional cricket tournament. Minister, make it make sense. Comrade Speaker, I was taken aback when the Honorable Minister stated, and I quote, "Sports and recreational facilities across the country were in a state of neglect." Sir, it was under the APNU-AFC government in which the Light It Up project started, where for the first time in Guyana's history, more than 30 community grounds and basketball courts received lights, which allow for the athletes to train beyond sunset. Those noteworthy to mention, sir, are in the Upper Mazaruni in Region 7. Communities like Camarang, Jawala, Raramadang, and Kako were all lit. In Letem, Region 9, it was the National Sports Commission who partnered with the municipality, and all of the grounds in the municipality were also lit. Minister, make it make sense. Comrade Speaker, it was under the APNU-AFC government in which the Community Ground Enhancement Fund was increased from a paltry $1 million for ground to $2, $3, $5, $7, $10, and $14 million respectively. This amount was allocated to ensure that those spaces were properly fenced and playing surfaces became playable to avoid injury. Take, for example, sir, the number 53 Community Center in Region 6, where for the first time the residents and athletes alike had access to a fully fenced ground, washroom facility, lights, etc. Others are the Paradise Ballfield, Cotton Tree, and Bath Community Center grounds in Region 5. Comrade Speaker, asked the Honorable Minister to make it make sense. It was under the APNU AFC government that the National Sports Commission commenced and every year after hosted the Janet Jagan Memorial Games, in which schools across Region 3 and 4 competed in games at the National Gymnasium. Minister, make it make sense. The National Sports Commission also hosted the Archachong, Desmond Height, Forbes Burnham, and every year fully supported the Dr. Chedi Jagan cycling race in New Amsterdam with cash donation and other forms of support. Minister, make it make sense. It was the APNU AFC government who partnered with Hockey, Squash, Table Tennis Association, which allowed them to successfully host their respective international tournament right here. It was the coalition government, sir, who made it possible for the squash court to be upgraded, which allowed Guyana to host the Caribbean Area Squash Association tournament, which was funded from funds from the government of Guyana in 2017. Sir, I must mention, in 2016, Guyana hosted the Caribbean Junior Table Tennis Tournament. And also, sir, in 2019, Guyana hosted the Caribbean Senior Tournament, which saw 11 countries participating in that tournament right here in Guyana. It was the coalition government who purchased equipment, gave the much needed financial support to all the association that catapult their work. Minister, make it make sense. Recognizing the accomplishment and supporting the aspiration of those athletes who formally placed Guyana on the world stage, such as Ms. Allian Pompey, who won gold at the Commonwealth 2002 in Manchester and silver in New Delhi in 2010. The National Sports Commission sponsored the Allian Pompey International Invitational Track and Field Meet. The inaugural meet saw 50 athletes from across the globe vying for top spots in 17 track and field events. The meet was sanctioned by the IWAF, now World Athletics, the international governing body for the sport. This meant, sir, that all results were used as qualifiers for regional competition, world championships, and even the Olympics for the first time in Guyana's history. Minister, make it make sense. Comrade Speaker, because the coalition government recognizing the value and importance of supporting persons living with disability, the inaugural Special Needs Sports was held, which saw for the first time students with special needs competing in a number of disciplines. As the years went on, the numbers of participants and school grew, requiring the event to be spread over a 3-day period and at multiple locations, including the Leonora Track and Field.
Honorable Chief Whip, at this time we require an extension.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask that the Honorable Chief Whip be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Member Mr. Patterson. Honorable Chief Whip, you have 5 minutes to conclude.
Thank you, Comrade Speaker. The National Gymnasium, Colgreen Pool, this was the first in Guyana's history. Comrade Speaker, because of the National Sports Commission advocacy, Guyana Para-Olympic Committee was given recognition by the International Para Committee. This was the first for Guyanese with a disability and in the areas of sports development, which enabled them to compete internationally. And sir, competed they did. With all of the necessary funding from the NSC, in 2015, athletes with a disability participated in the Special Olympic World Games in Los Angeles and the Special Olympic World Summer Games in the United Arab Emirates in 2019 for the first time in Guyana's history. Minister, make it make sense. It was the same coalition government in 2015 for the first time in Guyana's history supported the Guyana Blind Cricket Association's participation in regional blind cricket tournament in St. Lucia. Sir, it is important to note that in 2018, 5 blind Guyanese cricketers were afforded the opportunity to represent the West Indies blind cricket team and all perform exceptionally well. Comrade Speaker asks the minister to make it make sense. Comrade Speaker, I can go on to list the many achievements by the AP and UAFC government, but time will not permit me. Time will not permit me. But what is important to note, sir, is that all of this was done without funding from the oil and gas sector. What is even more noteworthy, sir, is that even with all of the resources the current administration has, some federations and associations are saying the same thing, that it was better under the AP and UAFC. Sir, just last October, all of us in this house read in shock the letter by Guyanese Olympian boxer Kevin Alikok detailing the lack of support for our international athletes representing Guyana, ultimately having a negative impact on our athletes' performance. You ask yourself the question, but how is this possible in the PPP oil-rich economy? Minister, make that make sense. Comrade Speaker, there is an allocation here for pavilion for the athletics track in Region 6 and 10. Mr. Speaker, these tracks were built by the AP and UAFC. To right the historical wrong meted out to the athletes of track and field by the People's Progressive Party Civic, who constructed the Leonora track and field in Leonora, knowing full well that the bulk of the athletes come from regions 4 and 10. Minister, make that make sense. Comrade Speaker, 3 years on of the PPP and 4 budgets almost amounting to $2 trillion. And to date, this country does not have a national sports policy. Minister, make that make sense. Sir, I would like to thank the staff of the Ministry of Finance. And in closing, Mr. Speaker, Budget 2023 was presented on Monday, the 16th of January. Coincidentally, Dr. Martin Luther King Day, observed by the people of the United States as one of its influential, if not the most influential civil rights leader of all time. Comrade Speaker, one would have believed that the PPP was turning a corner and was about to make a reality of what Dr. Martin Luther King dreamt of when he stated, and I quote, "I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." End of quote. Dr. King also stated, sir, and I quote, "The time is always right to do what is right." Budget 2023, sir, has not done yet, has again not done what is right by the Guyanese people. Comrade Speaker, it was former President Dr. Chedi Jagan who said, and I quote, "You cannot live a Cadillac lifestyle in a donkey cart economy." Sir, Guyana is now an oil-producing nation with the biggest budget ever of $781.9 billion, almost $1 trillion, and only 1.7% is going to the Guyanese people. It is pellucid, sir. Guyana now has a Cadillac economy, but it is the People's Progressive Party Civic who has the Guyanese people living a donkey cart lifestyle. Comrade Speaker, as a result of what I've articulated above, the theme of this budget, improving lives today, building prosperity for tomorrow, just like the One Guyana mantra, sir, they will remain but a fleeting illusion to be pursued but never obtained. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable Chief Whip, I was trying to make sense of your attack on the performance of Parliament. And I would like to set some of the records with respect to the operations of Parliament, because you did mention a number of issues with the Parliament. And this is the 2002 record. 26 bills were presented to the National Assembly. 26 acts of Parliament were assented to. 23 motions were published on notice papers. 20 resolutions were passed in the National Assembly. 54 questions were published on notice paper. 43 questions were answered, and there were 19 sittings held. So this is the record which I stand proud on. Honorable members, I think this is a good opportunity to take the suspension for 1 hour